Hello, everyone. This is DDoS with the Bigfoot Dogman Research Project. It is my gracious pleasure to be here today with a member of our Facebook page who I admire a great deal because she exposes the hucksters and the hoaxsters out there that make things difficult for boots on the ground researchers and people who genuinely want to learn about this subject. Her name is Miss Deborah Hatswell. She had her first sighting in 1982 and went on to start the British Bigfoot Research Group. So, Miss Hatswell, and we just had a great conversation for about 30 minutes. It's our first time getting to actually talk. You know, we've spoken on Facebook before, and I think we're cut from the same cloth.
Well,
We
that's
just
an
want
honour.
the honest to
That's
God truth out there.
an honour that you would say that, because I think that you are a gentleman and you are incredibly honest, and that's something that you don't find a lot of in the Bigfoot research world. Well, I should say you do find a
I
lot of,
sincerely
but
appreciate that.
I think everything gets concentrated on the bad apples, doesn't it? The ones making the
Yeah,
greatest amount of
unfortunately.
noise, yeah. And then there's the
Yeah,
people like me and you on the ground doing what we can, day in, day out of
yeah,
our own
exactly. With the
pocket.
regular people.
Yeah, just regular people, open to share and see if people are finding the same as us and we're finding the same as them. No agenda, no hidden agenda, just wanting to understand. Um,
And exactly. And as simple as that concept is, it's hard for people to wrap their minds around that concept that, because, and that's how this community that, we've come into, you, of course, a whole lot longer than I've been in it. That's what it's turned into is, there's people that are afraid to actually come to folks like us and tell what they've experienced. And
yeah,
that's extremely sad. And it's
even to voice
disappointing.
an opinion, it's become wrong to voice your opinion. It's not okay to say, I actually don't find that. I find something completely different. That you might as well
Right.
just take the pages out of your book and throw your book away, because you're never going to learn anything. I've had English researchers that have been doing this for 11 months that have told me that all Bigfoots travel at night. And I said, that's
Uh,
theory. You cannot state that as a fact. You can say that's what you've observed in your area, but that's like watching a man in Alaska and saying you understand everything about the entire human race.
right.
That yeah, I need to know what's happening in America, what you're finding, and I want to know what they're finding in Europe, and I want to know what they're finding elsewhere, and then I can say, well, actually, I'm finding that. That becomes evidence.
There
But
you go. That's the data that goes into the research that is the
oh,
evidence. So we can
yeah.
make those comparisons, and then we find the similarities within the comparisons, and we start getting answers.
Does America have a national database of society of structures like
Uh,
like the one I've set one up, you see, in Britain, as each
which is
research is
fantastic.
Ah, right, yeah. But well,
And I
that's
mean,
it. Then
it's cool that you did that,
it's a
and
much
folks,
smaller.
she did this boots on the ground before the internet. I mean, she's going to these places, talking to the people who had the sightings in the areas. I mean, what was the 30 years? That
35 years.
35 years.
Mhm.
So I mean, and that's amazing to me,
Um,
and we need more people like that here.
there are a lot of. I met with quite a few Americans back in, I'd say, 2004, 2005 on the old Skype, and they did exactly like this. They traded, they shown what each other were getting. They had a chat about what had gone on that day when they were out and about. There was no arguing, there was no drama, there was just honesty and opinion, and it was absolutely wonderful. And then Facebook came along, and
Right.
everybody moved to Facebook, and people were no longer Skyping. I mean, I'm in the UK, so I would stay up till like 12 midnight because the American guys were just coming online. Then they'd be coming on about 6, 7 o'clock. But it was worth staying up for. And then, like I
Oh,
say,
absolutely.
Facebook came along, and that changed everything, didn't it? The group set up, and the I know this, and I am an expert in this, and I am telling you this. And if you're in
Right.
that group, you can't be in this group. It's Facebook is a playground, and I have one leg stuck there because a lot of witnesses find me there.
I was Kirk Stokes and myself, we had the idea and we set up the Facebook group, and I love it, but I understand exactly what you mean.
Yeah.
I just want to, as you know, I just want to present what I'm seeing to people. And I was talking to a gentleman the other day, and I was telling him about the journals that I keep, the data. And he was like, "What do you mean journals?" And this is another quote unquote researcher.
Right.
He said, "Yeah, I have journals, of the wind conditions, the weather patterns, the topography of where I go compared to where I've been. That's the data that you have to collect when you're trying to encounter these creatures. When you do, it just completely blew my mind that I would have to explain this to someone who has been doing this a whole lot longer than me."
I advise even a simple notebook. I don't get out much to research anymore, unfortunately, but I use my iPhone and I speak into it and I make notes and I remember something and I'll speak into it and I make notes. But you don't know that could be important 12 months down the line.
Absolutely.
You might see a sign when you're out. I walked past a million X's before I knew that X's were a sign. It was only on sharing with other researchers. I'm thinking, I've seen that. I've seen that. The amount of Americans that say to me, there are no Bigfoots in the UK, right? There are none. 99% of them have never been to the UK, for starters. Yeah? So don't tell me what's in my country. I'm not going to tell you what's in Ohio because I don't know. I've never been. But if he isn't here and I'm finding the same structures that you're finding, who's making your structures? Because I've got them.
That's kind of crazy to me that, even in the UK, you're still finding the X structures, the upside down pyramids, all that type of stuff. So we were talking about that last night. Oklahoma Sasquatch and myself, we're both, natives of Oklahoma. Mm-hmm. It's phenomenal to me that universally throughout the United States, you're finding similarities in these structures, which could be a form of language or something to these creatures. But now, thinking about it, you found the same thing, over there in the UK. Like,
I can
adds a little bit more conjecture.
You can put a structure up and I will match it, and I will match it from Scotland, and I'll match it from Ireland, and I'll match it from Wales, and I'll match it from a county. You pick a county and I can match it from there. So somebody's making them.
Right.
And they're exactly the same that you're finding. They're the same that Iger's finding in Russia. They're the same that they're finding in Sweden. So that would mean that there aren't any in America. If there aren't any in the other places in the world where these structures are made, you have to wipe that from your evidence database. Because if they're in England, you understand, it's a big air for the Americans to get their head round. But if you're saying that structure is made by a Bigfoot, and I have the same structure, and there are no Bigfoots here, who made yours?
Right.
So that is no longer evidence. So we go to footprints. These footprints from the UK. Exactly the same footprints that you're finding. So if there's no Bigfoot here, there's your footprints out of the window. You've not got them in your evidence database anymore. Or you could just accept that there are other countries other than America, and Bigfoots are in them.
I think that they have to be everywhere. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but wasn't there stories like hundreds and hundreds of years ago about wild men in the woods of the UK and England? And
950 AD is the first mention of a tall, hairy giant in AD, and that's by Pliny the Elder. And he talked about the Silvestries of Albion, because England was called Albion back then, and what a horrid place it was. A squirrel could cross from tip to tip without touching the floor, was how he described it. We have the Green Man history. We've always had a giant in the forest that looks after nature and is a caretaker. We have customs and legends and holidays that surround him.
Wow.
But we've never drawn him like... You don't get to see him. He's always shown as hiding in the leaves.
Imagine that.
It's a human face, but he's hiding in the leaves, and that's what he does. And he runs in the woods, and he snaps, and he makes bangs, and he leaves the wood sign, and he makes a chittering, chattering, mumbling speech when he speaks. What does that sound like?
So right there, we got the samurai chatter. We have the uncanny elusiveness of the creature, as some Native American tribes used to call them, the boss or the guardian of the woods. Yeah. I mean,
the rivermen. Another word for him in England is the rivermen, because they follow the waterways.
Right. And, we were talking about this the other night, how a lot of these ancient Native American cultures would say they live underneath the rivers.
Yeah. The
So, I mean,
UK,
it's amazing, the similarities between two
yeah, and
countries that, they technically should not have the similarities. It's like the culture is the same across different cultures and different countries.
every single country in the world has a story of a hairy man, whether it be a hairy giant or a very small creature, like in Hawaii. At one time in the world, 20 hominids walked this world at the same time together.
A lot of people don't know that.
That is an awful lot of different species of hominids that can interbreed. We interbred Neanderthals. No, most of the British public have 5% Neanderthal in the blood. A lot of people don't know that. That spreads across Eastern Europe as well. We're not the purebred humans that we think we are. I
At
always
all.
think of him as a cousin or he's very like us. He looked like, I mean, that goes into my sighting, and people in England are probably sick of hearing about it. But
Well, us folks here in the South of the United States of America would love to hear it, because I'm sure there may be a few people in the chat, as well as some who will listen afterwards, who don't know about your sighting.
do you know the Sykesville monster in America? That case.
Yes, I don't know it verbatim, but I know what you're
You've
talking
seen
about.
the picture, haven't you? The one.
Yes, ma'am.
You've seen
I
the
do.
picture,
That's what I
amazing.
was thinking. Like, the picture came into my mind.
Yeah. Well, that's what it looked like. It looked that what I saw looked like that, exactly like that. It was. It looked like a man, but much bigger, much hairier. The teeth were like ours. The eyes were like ours. The nose was like ours, but flattened like a boxer's. And he looked at me, and I looked at him, and he looked as confused as I looked. And then I was off screaming. I ran screaming. It absolutely terrified me. I thought he was a monster at the time because he looked like a man and an ape combined. I'd never heard of Bigfoot. I lived in a little working class town in England, and with just the only thing I'd ever heard of was the Loch Ness monster, because obviously because of Scotland, nothing. I'd never heard of anything else. So I thought it was a monster. I didn't know what it was I'd seen. And I was 15 then. I was only a young girl.
Right.
So there was no internet. There was nowhere you could go and ask. And I asked adults, and they just either laughed it off and said it was a homeless man, or I'd seen a handicapped person, or he was about 7 foot tall. And he just leant out of the greenery. So he must have been stood there all that time, and I couldn't see him. And it was only when they say you see something out of the peripheral vision of your eye, a little
Right.
flicker of movement. And I'm sat on it. Basically, I'm 15. I'm wagging school, as we call it. I'm skipping school. I don't want to go in. It's May. There's an old country park, and there's a big mansion in it. Then hundreds of years ago, just one family lived in it, and they owned all the grounds. And that ground had just been left to ruin. The house was all boarded up, and everything had overgrown. It had about, there was like, must have been a beautiful garden at one point, but it was terrible. 20 years of overgrowth, and ivy was everywhere. And we used to sneak in there and hide. And I was with my friend, and we sneaked in, and it was about dinner time. It was about 12 o'clock, and it was lovely and warm. It was really nice. And we were playing about, and we were laughing and joking. And we were there about an hour, and I seen a slight movement to the corner of my eye. And as I looked, when you make eye contact with somebody, I made eye contact with the bushes, but I made eye contact with the bushes is the only way I can describe it. And then and then he leant his face forward. I only saw him from mid-chest. I didn't see a body. I saw him from mid-chest. So I could see his shoulders and I could see the top of his chest, but my face concentrated on his face. That's what I looked at. And it was only a second. It was a split primal second, and I was so frightened, and I'm so ashamed of this, but I was so frightened I pushed my friend to the floor so we'd get her first. And I ran. honest, I know. I screamed and I ran, and people think it must have been this wonderful spiritual awakening. It was not. It was awful. I was like a Scooby Doo character. I was gone. And I lay on that bed for a day and a half, and I cried and I cried and I cried because I didn't know what was worse, whether A, monsters really did exist
Right.
and my parents had lied, or B, even worse, they existed and they didn't know anything about it.
And either
And
one
I
of
had,
those options shatters your reality, you know.
at 15, in a way, it's like somebody in New York City seeing a gorilla. You can't work out how. How could I have seen it? Am I going mad? Has something happened in my brain? But my friend was with me, and my friend saw it as well.
Which, you know,
So
adds credence to exactly like, so your friend,
you have that to hang on to, don't you? You have this. Well, she saw it, so I know I'm not crackers. But the other
right?
witnesses, a lot of them don't. They're on their own. They've been out with a dog or they've been out walking and they've seen something and they've got to come home and there's nobody to tell and there's nobody to ask. And with no Bigfoot, no mention of Bigfoot in the UK, not at all until around 2007, 2008. And then people started talking about it. But even now, it's not a household name. You can say it to people, they don't know what it is. But I'm going back 35 years. So then I
Right.
was the
You
girl
know,
that
the
saw
Sasquatch and
monsters.
Bigfoot's a strictly American thing too.
Yeah. Well, I think
The names
Bigfoot
themselves, I mean.
it is the wrong word, isn't it? I think it's the wrong word anyway. It was just coined by that damn journalist, wasn't it, who said
Yeah,
Bigfoot
pretty
thinks
much.
man. Yeah, so like Sasquatch is a much better name for them, I think. But in the UK, I think what we have here is much different. I think it's like Europe, where you have the Almas and the Almasties, and it's much more a human looking. I know you get some reports, don't you, in the US where they say he looked like a wild man or a caveman type, Neanderthal type figure.
Right.
But then you get the big giant ape Sasquatch, the big things that you see on Sasquatch Chronicles, that kind of report. And I get the same in the UK. I get
That's
when they see
fascinating.
them in the daytime, they describe them as caveman like, or the man always comes first in the description. It was a man ape, or it was a man monkey, or it was a man bear. And we don't have bears in the UK at all. But when they see them at night, they have that shape in the shadow. So they'll say it look. I always give them like at 6 different things and say, did it look anything like any of these? And they always point to the Sasquatch Chronicles one and say it looked like that, and I couldn't make its face out. Its face was in shadow. So it seems like we do even get this differences are the same if you get what I mean in different
Yes, ma'am.
countries.
And we were talking about that earlier. You know how, and like I said, you're an old schooler. You were doing this before there was the easy way to do it, like
Yeah,
the internet and everything. And it's phenomenal that you were in a culture, in a community, in this thing that was all about sharing information, sharing notes, and trying to get down to the bottom of it.
yeah,
Um,
just the grassroots, just understanding. Just you
right,
need a
independent
little.
researchers.
Yeah, you just need a little clue, don't you? And that leads to something else, and that leads on to something else. And you can come into this research with a set opinion of what it is. And that's fantastic. That's wonderful. But your research will peter out. If you come
Yeah,
into it,
exactly.
if you come into it with an open mind and you take on board what everybody has to say, because we're not just dealing with the Bigfoot during a sighting, you're also dealing with the witness, and the way they act could make a difference, or the way they interpret the creature, as shall we say, the body language or the facial expression, instantly can be fear. But we do fear the unknown, humans, and we tend to project that fear.
Absolutely. And I think that that's a lot of what people have with, you know, it's a frightening and daunting task
Yeah,
to come into close
yeah,
contact or even a passive contact with one of these creatures, because we're not set up through our educational systems anywhere in the world, through
to
or any kind
accept
of
it.
religious systems, to understand seeing one of these things and have our brain rationalize it in the moment. So it's going to go back to that carnal, just primitive
Yeah,
fear.
normal.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and that's what I try to do, and I know you would do as well. Try to rationalize that for the witness.
Just to try and help them, in all honesty, to say, well,
Right.
I know you were frightened, but take yourself back to the moment. Did it reach out at any point? No. Did it attempt to try and corner you or get you on your own? No. What did it do? It walked away. What did it do? It leant back into the trees. What did it do? It ran away. And then I say to him, well, look at it from this point of view. It wanted to avoid you. It could have
Exactly.
harmed you if it wanted to. It could have followed you home. It didn't. It ran off in the opposite direction, or it made a distraction. Same as the American. They snap branches, they shake trees, they throw stones and acorns and things like that in the UK. Howls and growls and whoops and all kinds of things. And that's enough normally to get the witness scurrying away.
Absolutely. And
And
I think that and I don't know where their minds are, but I think that they know that we have that sort of fear of them, like, because I mean they're physically superior to us in every way. You know what I mean? Without
yeah,
the
definitely
game
physically.
changer of a firearm,
Yeah. Yeah. You see, I always try to say to people, try and imagine them as a tribe. Stop thinking about them like apes and try and imagine them as a tribe. You don't walk into the Amazon and find a tribe. The tribe finds you. They know you're coming.
right?
Yeah, they've heard you coming. They've heard you getting out of the car. So,
Yeah, exactly. You know, I know exactly what you mean, and it's kind of almost pompous in a way to think that we somehow have an upper hand on them in their own environment. They've
they are
survived since.
the masters of their own environment. That's it to a T. They are masters of their own environment. So you can put as many cameras up as you like. But if you went in your front room tomorrow and there was a black thing in the corner with a flashing light on it, you would either smash it up or avoid it, wouldn't you? You'd notice it
Yeah, exactly.
because he knows that forest like you know your front room.
Maybe even better, because these things, in my opinion, I think that their natural sense of smell,
Yeah,
taste, eyes, I think
yeah.
it's vastly
Enhanced.
superior to ours, and maybe even other creatures.
I think we had it once. I think back in Paleo days, I think we had it once because we would have needed it to stay alive.
Right. Yeah, when we're living in trees and stuff, we
Yeah,
have to see things before they get there. Our senses were more in tune, but we
I
live in a
think we
completely
still have
artificial
it.
environment now.
I think we still have a tiny bit of it in us, and we don't realise that we have a tiny bit of it in us. And it's that something's watching me, that feeling of being watched.
Right.
And you will
That
notice that
had it.
after that feeling of being
Absolutely.
watched, your hearing will kick in, and you will hear every leaf that shakes. Fear is very good at honing your senses, because you need them. And that's why your brain goes, I need to be able to see, run, quickly. That's the first thing that happens with fear is your legs start moving, your blood start pumping, and you go. When we were caveman back then, we would have relied on that daily. So we
To
would have,
survive. Yeah, I mean,
yeah,
we didn't go to grocery stores, or
exactly.
have the safety of buildings and police departments. We
Mm.
were as primitive and as primal as these creatures out in the woods.
Most definitely. Most definitely. When you were talking, when I remember listening to when you were talking to Chris the other day, and you were talking on a similar subject, and you were saying that that they can't just go to a supermarket, can they? The only thing they have to think of is shelter, water, and food. So what do they do with the rest of their time? We don't know. But if we can spot a
Right.
pattern,
It could be benign. It could be something that some of these tree structures could be something out of boredom. That's where getting together with other researchers, and
yeah,
just like you told me, it kind of rocked my world that because I haven't studied much about the British cryptids outside of the werewolves that were reported in Scotland. You know,
yeah,
until I
yeah,
met you on our Facebook page, and
yeah.
started studying like your history and cryptozoology and everything, which Cryptids UK blogspot, you've been written up in the Cryptozoology News. Um, you're doing phenomenal things over there in the UK, I believe.
I'm doing my best. I'm trying. I'm trying. I helped set up the team, and I helped set up the Facebook group, and they're running fine on their own. They don't need me now. I am willing to help any new researcher that is out there, or any researcher. If you want to message me, email me, whatever, I will find time to answer you. And I will be able to say I've seen that structure in this county or in that county. When I set up the database, I realised that researchers were sending me their research to look at, I think in the hopes that I would see his face or his figure. But what I was seeing was that I've seen that tree lean before. Where I've seen that arch before. And
Right.
I asked them to start noting down not only the arch, what was underneath the arch, what was either side of the arch, what the arch was pointing to. And we think they point to water. The pin end in the UK normally points to a body of water. So I can advise people of that and say, when you're out, will you just check, have a look at your arches, and if they don't point to water, have a look and tell me what they do point to. Because then I
Absolutely.
might be able to see if the signs change, or, from area to area, like a regional accent, do they change? Because I do know that some signs will appear in Scotland that we're not finding in Wales. And some will appear, say, in the southern counties that we're not finding. But there is an overlap, as if, I use the word tribe. If you were a tribe and you were continuously on the move, you would interlap and overlap with other tribes, wouldn't you? Especially
Right.
on a small island. And I do think that's how the wild man lives. I think he is on the move constantly, because we don't have the vast resources in one area like you do in America. So you would have to move from the north to south, especially during the seasons, to be able to
Right.
get enough berries, enough herbs. The food's out there if you look for it, and there's a
But as
growing
you say
trend.
though, and I believe just like you do, that they're in tribes. They're in these
I
family
it would
pods,
have to
and
be.
yeah, absolutely. And but to keep that tribe going, they can't be foraging for food for 2 days on end. These things are large creatures, and I imagine that they need a lot of protein on a daily basis. Um,
Yeah, you can. When I studied the paleo diet, I wanted to understand what early man was eating at the time. And Charmaine Fraser, if anybody's out there and you get a chance to look at her channel, she has a far better knowledge than I do on the history of like hominids in the UK and around the world. She has an anthropological mind. She understands the cultures, and she can say, "Oh, it was 14,000 years ago that this hominid walked." I can't do that. I don't. But I wanted to understand the diet and the habits, um, to see if you could feasibly have enough food to eat. And what I was really surprised at, and it shocked me, most of our protein came from bugs and grubs and small critters.
Absolutely.
So I didn't know that. I was thinking that they're going to have to take a deer every day, and or the odd sheep. And it said no, that a lot of our diet was we supplemented protein by using pine nuts and things like that. You knew exactly what food was around you at the time, and you had this mental memory map of where it was throughout your life, like a bear does. And you
Yes,
just
ma'am.
continuously revisited these sites. And I thought, I wonder if that's how he lives. I wonder if that's how he goes about it in the UK. Does he follow the berries from north to south like the bears do in America? Um, and like the Appalachian Trail, you tend to get a lot of sightings on the Appalachian Trail.
Right. And
That was what.
I think that's because of the elusiveness of the creature. Personally, like I don't think they
Do
would.
you think,
We talked about that
do you
earlier. I don't
think
think
that
they
they
want anything
migrate
to
in
do with
America?
us. I'm sorry.
No, in America, do you think that they migrate up and down the country?
I think some do, but
Mm-hmm.
like the tribe that I deal with down here on the Red River Basin, in what we call Texoma, the land between
Yeah,
Texas and Oklahoma. I've come to the conclusion just from going in there every day. Sometimes you're hearing activity 300 yards off.
yeah,
Sometimes they're right there, within 100 yards of me pulling in. I'd say that what I'm dealing with, they don't have to move because we have
yeah,
a flowing river, which I mean that's the natural resource that provides life.
yeah. So they have everything that they need.
Right, but I do think that maybe the vast majority of them do migrate because that's a special circumstance. What I got down here, A lot of them, they
an
don't have
habituation. Yeah,
vast, forest areas
yeah.
to roam around in and, forage for their food without
I
being
think
seen. I think that's a key element to it, Deborah. I
I
mean,
think that's the same here. I think it's the same here. We have hotspots when I look. The reason I mapped them was I wanted to understand the patterns and I wanted to work out how they were skirting the towns because I was thinking, well, there's no way he could have been there. How's he got into town? That was the
right,
main. How's he done it? But I lived on the edge of town, like a lot of new builds. You have the inner city, and then as you go out, you have the suburbs, and then you get right to that bit where there's a town, and the rest of it is just farms and fields and forests. And that was
right,
kind of like the area where I was. Then I realised that the country part was only about a mile and a half away, and that led to a river. It's called the Irwell River Valley, and that runs all the way to the Pennines, which is our Appalachian Trail, and then off up into Scotland. And I noticed that a couple of the sightings were around that. And I thought, right, start checking rivers, Deb, have a look on rivers and see. And the sightings were following the rivers, especially the ones that were estuaries. Seems to be clusters around those areas. So I don't know if that means that they're hanging around there and that's why they're being seen. It's a fantastic food source because you're between freshwater and coast.
right.
So it gives you so many more options, doesn't it, food wise?
Absolutely. Food wise, elusive travel.
Yeah,
If you look at the Mississippi River, that goes from north to south, I call that the main artery. And
yeah,
these rivers and tributaries, going from east to west, they're like the veins coming off that main artery. And when you look at a map, it's a lot of forest areas around these rivers. So that
yeah,
leads. I don't think these things. It's almost from dealing with this same family pod for 9 months. It seems to me it's almost like a smudge on their. If they are capable of having honor, it's a smudge on their honor to be seen,
yeah, yeah. I feel the
seen
same.
completely. Even
Yeah,
as comfortable, as these things are without having to run into the deep brush when I come in there, 50 yards away, whatever the case may be, they won't completely show themselves to me, even though they know I don't mean them any harm. I've walked up to the nest when there's been cubs in there before, but it still seems like the adults and the older adolescents will obscure parts of the vast majority of their body. And to me, I think that they're just, I don't think they're afraid of us. They don't want anything to do with us. And I think that's something in them that's natural.
yeah. That's understandable, that though, isn't it?
It's absolutely understandable.
Yeah. The documentary that Chris Turner's making here in the UK is going to be called Elusive because I think
Right.
they can hide in plain sight. I think that
Oh,
they can
absolutely.
be not that far away from you and you can't see them. And I think that's how
Or
they
right
get.
in front of you.
Yeah. I think we in the
That's the
UK.
crazy part to me. Yeah.
Yeah, here in the UK, I think we lose a lot of accounts to the paranormal world. I think the howls and screams and these or footsteps running past me really quickly in the woods or glowing eyes and things like that. I often wonder if they're misidentified because you wouldn't automatically in the UK think Bigfoot, you would think ghost. And that's why a lot
Right.
of it's reported as werewolf because we don't have anything to reference it to. We did in America. They'll say you saw a bear. Well, you can't do that in the UK. We don't have them. Never had them. We don't have well, we did hundreds of years ago, but we hunted them all out because that's what we do. And we had wolves and we hunted all them out as well. So there's none of them in the UK either. So anything taller than a deer is very noticeable in the
For
UK.
sure.
Yeah, but I've done it. I did it as a test. I put on a really bright stripy top, and I didn't go to a big wood. I just went to a little wood where you'd walk your dog, and I made myself as bright and as colourful as I could. And I said to my husband, "Right, I'm going to take 4 steps back in, and I want you to take a photograph of me." You can't see me, but I'm only 4 steps off the path.
And people don't realize that. I mean, when everything's green and lush, just like you said, you could be wearing a vibrant colored shirt and you'd
Hmm.
still be hard pressed to see that person. Now, imagine something that has hide and fur the same color as the
As
natural
its surroundings, yeah,
trees. Absolutely. In fall, like I took some pictures and it baffled me the amount of colors that you see these creatures. I mean, like the dying grass,
yeah,
a hollow tree, it's almost blacker than, ones that's, these things come in a variety of colors, and there's not enough, I don't think. Well, there's a lot of evidence out there. There's a lot of true evidence. I won't say that, but I don't think there's enough of a spotlight on the people that are going out, just the, like you say, the grassroots, boots on the ground researchers who are getting close to the creature and putting out that evidence, and that's another reason why you're one of two people that I scouted out for, when I was really active in the Facebook group, because you rip apart a hoaxer. You completely eviscerate them, and it's fantastic. I love it. I mean, when I seen that, and I can't think for the life of me who it was, but I remember I was going to different, groups. This is when I first started getting evidence and, putting it on Facebook. And then we opened up the YouTube channel and all that. Yeah. I would see, just like we were talking about it a little bit earlier, when Facebook, the social media part of it, you kind of get the bully pulpits. And in my opinion, some of these groups can be kind of these little clubhouses for certain members.
Little cliques, like little cult.
Yeah, cliques, exactly. It's almost cultish. But and that's not, there's a lot of great groups out there, but that's besides the point. I saw that you put in one of these groups the private correspondence, the sightings that are the quote unquote sighting this guy supposedly filmed, and how it was a hoax, and him admitting it was a hoax. And I was like, this is beautiful. This is great.
That was an account where he'd gone to the newspaper and told the newspaper journalist all about this wonderful account that he'd had with a Bigfoot. And I took the journalist put it out there, and I contacted him, and I took the report, and for 18 months he was one of my witnesses, and I treated him the way I treat all of my witnesses, like friends. And I didn't have a clue.
It was Columbo, like the way I really wish I had it. Like it was great.
I don't think he was stumped, wasn't he? He was stumped. If you want to find out anything about anybody, watch the program Catfish, because it teaches you a million things about finding out information. Hence, when a photograph goes up that is claimed to be in a local wood next to this guy, and I checked the metadata on it, and it's from Washington State, and it belongs to a researcher in America, it's very easy for me to say that is not your photograph. And like an idiot, he, in a private message, said, I know it's not, but, it's my Facebook page, and I just do it for a laugh. It's a social experiment. I didn't like that, to see how gullible people are. And so I thought, well, I can do one or two things. I can lose my rag and call him a few names, or I can just go along with it and see if I give him enough rope, will he hang himself? And he did. And he tied a lovely bow and everything. And I screenshotted the lot because I knew that they would go down instantly. And I thought, right, what do I do with this now? And I did private message him and say, if you are prepared to remove that sighting and take down that page, I won't say anything to anybody.
Right. And you did give him that option, and that's great, because everything is out there to see. You took the high road of not trying to expose this dummy for the dummy that he is. And take it all down, and we'll forget the whole thing, and basically disappear from these groups and quit all this crap that you're doing. Yeah,
just go, because not only have you lied to me for 18 months, you've lied to every witness you've ever spoken to. Absolutely. And witnesses need honesty, and they need to know that when they're talking in a group, whether it be here, Facebook, or anywhere else, that who they're talking to is on the same level as them. So any man, to me, that can manipulate a photograph and lie, post American shots where signs have supposedly gone up in Britain at a Bigfoot, Bigfoot crossing. We've all seen them. They're on Bigfoot evidence. I'm thinking, does he not ever go on another page? It's really easy to see where this has come from. But he had this arrogance that I'm allowed to say what I want to anybody I want, and there's nothing you can do about it, and I'm not hurting anyone. And I thought, yes, you are. You're hurting the ones that are too scared to come forward, and you're hurting the ones that now are a bit frightened to go back to the woods, and you're hurting everybody that has trusted you and took you on board and listened to what you had to say.
Even new researchers who haven't seen the creature, they don't know what to look for because what he put forth isn't factually
Yeah,
what it is, you know?
yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's another point. I didn't think about that at the time. But yeah, to see he's misleading someone, isn't there? And to me, I did actually say to him, why didn't you just come forward in the beginning and say, I have an avid interest? I haven't had a sighting. I've not, but I really have a deep interest and I want to know more. And then I could have said, well, this is what I know. And, here's another person
Right.
you can chat to. And here's another person you can chat to. And then it starts off on an honest foot. And then if you go out and you find nothing, you say that you didn't find anything today. Absolutely nothing. There was nothing there. It might make for a boring video, but that person knows that they can trust you, you know?
Right. And I've said that before, Deborah, like I'm not the greatest interviewer of all time because the facts of the matter of this thing are kind of boring. When you start getting into the Bigfoot jumping off a cliff, parasailing type of nonsense, that's exciting and it's fun to listen to, this, that, and the other thing, but it's unrealistic. It's not what takes place. These crazy adventures that, some of these people have Bigfoot going on isn't the creature themselves. And to me, when I talk to somebody like I was, who didn't really have anyone except I did have Kurt, in which Kurt
Yeah.
Stokes, it was
You're very
amazing.
lucky because Kirk's an
Thank
honest man,
God.
isn't he?
Yes,
Yeah,
he's a
yeah,
very honest
exactly.
man, and we became very close very fast. And honestly, if I was to have the experiences that I had down here without him, I'd be just kind of out there in the wind, probably even today.
Yeah.
As far as what I was doing, he kind of helped me understand that there are a lot of people in the community, because I was a bright-eyed, bushy-tailed researcher thinking community meant just that,
Yeah.
what I couldn't figure out. I could just ask a question into the darkness of this field, and 1,000 people were going to come help me, and help me understand. But that wasn't, unfortunately, the case. It was the exact opposite of that.
Yeah, because
So
everybody wants you to. This is what I know, and I know this, and I know, and that's wonderful. But you've got
it's
to
like a
put.
competition. It's
Yeah,
crazy.
it's madness, and the best advice you can give somebody. I start a lot of my answers with, "I'm not really sure," or "I honestly don't know." But what I would suggest is trying it. What there's no harm in trying it. People will say, "Do you think I should do this, or do you think I should do that?" If that's what you want to do, then do it. Don't ever let
Right.
anybody say no, because what if you go out one day and you're researching and you see this rock, and some man on Facebook said to you, "You don't go near rocks. You don't like rocks. I know for a fact they don't like rocks." So you walk past it. You don't know that he wasn't sat behind that rock. So don't listen to the man on Facebook. Go with your gut. If your gut says check every crevice and every corner, then that's what you need to do, because then you know
Right.
that you've done your best in an honest way. And whether you find something or you don't find something, it doesn't matter. You had a day out in the woods, and that's a win. And that's kind of how I look at life. You know
Right.
how
And,
I
and
look at life.
this research field is exactly that. There's no glitz or glamour. It's not like what you see on TV. And I think I was actually talking to a great guy. He's a Marine who's a fantastic researcher in Tennessee, and he was saying the exact same thing. This guy came out. He was saying, "Okay, where are the cameras? We're going to go to where we had my sighting." And the guy who's veteran Marine, he said, "No, this is what we're going to do. We're going to study this map.
Yeah.
We're going to study where these encounters have happened, and we're going to take it from there." An hour later, he's doing the back end research, the brainy stuff, and this guy thinks that they're just going to be going through the woods willy nilly on some adventure like he sees on TV. And that's just not the case of it. It's hard work.
It is.
Sometimes it's unrewarding work, but when you find one tree break or get one answer that you had a question to the previous
Yeah.
day, that's like having 10 parades all at once.
Yeah,
To me, you know
exactly.
what I mean? Like that's my reward in this whole thing. And
And also when somebody says, "Oh, I've seen one like that. I've seen that tree break in my area."
exactly.
And then you're like, "Well, that's brilliant. Has anybody else seen anything like this in their area?" And then not only does that give us an excellent database, it gives you some other people that you can ask and say, "Have you found this? Did you notice this? Do you think this?" And because we're all just theorizing, aren't we? Until one of us, Catherine
Right.
Chadwick has a wonderful saying, until one of us sits down with them, we're all theorizing. We
Absolutely.
we can watch the habits and we can clock the routes and we can do all of these things and we can guess. But we're only ever going to know a small piece, aren't we? But we might all have small pieces that fit together and make a much bigger piece. So by saying, I'm not listening to you because I don't agree with your research technique or your theories, well, you just closed
Or,
it.
I'm an anthropologist or a zoologist, and you're just some guy who's running around in the woods with, your notebooks and your cameras. So why should I listen to you or take anything you say? That's another thing. The science world, I want to see the science world, independent researchers, no matter what their background is, everybody across the board who does what we do come together and I know it does happen to a certain degree. But just being in this thing a little less than a year, it's flawed.
It is. It's to me, science should get on board because they have managed to live outside with no clothing, without getting sick, without getting the things that we get, because we don't. What they're eating is a natural, healthy diet that combines medicine that we have no idea about. And it's all around us every day. And we call it weeds and we pull it up and we throw it away. And that was our original food. And I think if we studied the wild one on a scientific basis, we might find a few cures for things. And we might find a way of doing things differently where we're not robbing the planet.
Right.
But
we have to get the mainstream science world to even give us any kind of credence or credit. This thing's considered a pseudoscience still.
Yeah,
with even the DNA studies, it's still considered pseudoscience. It blows my mind.
Do you know what blows my mind? Paranormal people accept ghosts and they accept mediums. There's no argument in it, right? They are ghosts. There is another side. I've never seen a ghost.
Whether you're an atheist or some sort of religious zealot, there are people across the board who will believe in the supernatural and the paranormal as far as spirits, ghosts, goblins, spooks.
But that's easy to accept. But what is not easy to accept is that we are not the only person on this planet, in this universe, on this plane. We are so egotistical that we know everything.
Right. That's what I was about to say. I think our arrogance won't allow us to. There's something out there that if we were going out in the same conditions, no clothes, no weapons, that could just rip us apart without even dropping a bead of sweat. Mm-hmm. I think that kind of people's minds don't want to go there, but that's just the simple case of them. That's what is, whether we believe in them or not, they're there,
I think if we lived their life though, over the generations that they've lived their life, I think our body structures would be much different. Our eating habits would be much different, wouldn't they? And
absolutely.
We as soon as we started farming and making things easy for ourselves, we started to become lazy, and we lost a lot of tricks and knowledge and things that didn't get passed down anymore. And I think all those years, many, many millions of millennia ago, we were an incredibly fit, on the move species.
Absolutely. Well, I think it was, I read somewhere 9 miles a day was the average.
Can you imagine? Can you imagine?
We all went 9 miles a day. That was our average route throughout our entire day. That was a regular day for a human being.
And if progress hadn't come along, we would have had all this millennia to build on that, to evolve on top of that. Could you imagine the human specimen that we would be today?
We'd probably be the same size, but we could take those Sasquatch like it was nothing. I mean, I understand exactly what you mean. And the thing is, we live in a completely artificial construct. The cars we drive, the cities we live in, the concrete that we walk on, it's completely artificial. So that goes back to what you said, the preposterous arrogance of man, in my opinion, to say that, this creature can't exist. When's the last time, I ask these people, when's the last time you went to a national forest and went off the beat it trail, went off the trail?
We get a lot of them in the UK. We get a lot of them.
You were telling me that earlier, the people that go and sit in their vehicles at these beautiful forests.
They pack a sandwich lunch and they get in the car and they drive to the car park and they sit in the car and they look out at the view. And there won't be one car, there'll be carloads, and they're all along the front and the coast, and they sit there and they look at the
bananas.
you know, and say, like I was saying, at winter time, it can be dark 3 p.m. In winter. So you finish your shift, you come home from work, you're freezing because the weather's not great. You go in, you plug on the cellar, blinds are shut. That's you for the night. Most of the UK lives like that. We don't hunt like the Americans. We're not allowed to just go and hunt like you are. We're not allowed to own a gun.
Right. But well, I mean,
But
even though we are like, we have to get licenses. There's certain seasons, where you can hunt certain
there's a
animals, and
culture,
that's
isn't
because of the
there?
population. But yeah,
You have
very much so.
an
There is a
outdoor culture. That we don't have that.
of sorts.
That's
That's kind of going away with the newer generation, though, Deborah. That's kind of like going the way
There's
of
a
the
lot of
dodo, in my
rewilders,
opinion.
though, isn't there? There's a lot of people who are rewilding that are going back to,
That's true.
yeah,
Some of
that
the, I
want
guess,
to.
the older generations, that worked their entire lives or saw their parents work their entire lives in these
Mm,
cities, in factories, and they kind of want to go back to the rural areas
yeah,
and
yeah,
live how their grandparents did, which is
yeah, exactly. Because
phenomenal.
it just maybe nostalgia. It just seemed better in a way. It's much better. I don't know because we've become so soft. I don't know how we'd cope. Some of us, but I
Right.
can give you an example. Right, I was out with a dog and I'm walking the dog. It's a few years back now. And I'm in Clifton Country Park, which is full of deer and everything. And there's another lady there, and she's walking the dog. And a deer came out of the woodline, and she turned to me and she said, "Oh, look at that, a reindeer. How's it got here from Greenland?" And I just looked at her like she was an alien. And I thought, surely you know that there are deer in Britain. And she didn't. She didn't
Wow.
know that we had deer. So in my head, I'm thinking, this is absolute madness. People don't know how much beauty is around them because we're not looking. We're just
No,
not
not
in
at
the
all.
UK. We're not looking. So lots of people have got into book research in the UK are suddenly discovering the outdoors for the first time in their lives, or reconnecting with something they did as a child. Because we did play, kids play in the woods in Britain. It's what we do. We don't have a million places to go, or to entertain you. So you play outside. I would imagine you do the
Right.
same in America. And you build dens and you swing across trees and you do all that. The lads make ramps with bikes. And a lot of witnesses can be children or around that age when they see them. But the minute that you get to about 17 or 18 and you start work, the culture becomes about working and going home and working and going home. And when people go out, they go to the pub. And when they go on holiday, they go abroad. So there isn't an outdoors culture.
It's not too different here. I mean, there was this game, and it's sad some of the stuff that happened. I kind of make a joke out of it, but it's serious. Like the younger generation, the Pokemon Go, it was like a GPS type game. They're going out finding
Mhm.
these these little make believe monsters. My kids play my kids play these card games with those things on there, and it baffles me. Back when I was a child, like punishment was being kept inside.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, yeah, that was the punishment. Punishment to them now is when I tell them to go outside and play. They walk around, with their lips poked out and their head down.
Yeah, like you're punishing them kind of thing.
It's baffling to me, but
It's like
you know,
that. Yeah, I said to my friend the other day, she posted a picture on Facebook and said, "Look at the pair of them fed up looking at the Xbox." Now, at the back of my house is a fence, and across that fence there's fields and woodland and a pond, and there's a stream that you can go in. There's all kinds of stuff. So I said to her, "Take them on the field, let them have a run, tire them out." She went, "Oh no, one of them doesn't like dirt, and the other one doesn't like the outside."
wow, doesn't like dirt. I think I used to eat dirt for
But
fun.
I've been home and got in so much trouble for being full of mud, or have ripped something, or I fell out of a tree and broke my nose and there's blood on everything. And you went out in the
That was the
morning,
fun of it.
and you had to be back for tea, and that's what you did. You just went out and you played and you climbed trees and you just found something to entertain yourself with. We had a lot of bomb sites in the UK. Because where it had been bombed in the war and they'd still not got around to repairing it when I was a young child in the 70s. And we used to play in the bombed out houses because there wasn't anywhere else to go and play. And your parents were quite happy with that. We have this much laid back thing in the UK where it doesn't matter if your kid wanders, they will come home. Not so much nowadays, but back then when I was a child.
Right,
So,
and then like I said, it's
yeah,
similar to these days. But I remember going door to door for Halloween. But I think you can kind of put that little coup in your cap because 35 years ago when you started this thing, now there are, I've actually talked to a researcher from the UK. Is a guy, a little bit younger than me. I think he was like 26. And I mean, had it not been for your sighting and building kind of uh, a repertoire with the people and trying to get them to understand that these things
Mm.
are out there, and you'd be surprised that the culture is not that different. I was on Vault Stream because he unfortunately had to deal Vault from the Vault of Nightmares. He's a horror narrator, friend of the BDRP,
Right.
friend of mine. He had to deal with a hoaxer. He got called out. And a lot of people don't know this. Like, what he does, he actually does go out sometimes and deal with sightings.
Mm.
He had to
Yeah.
take time away from his family to go out, and these guys had put some sort of an apparatus on the shoe of a horse and sent him out in the field. They showed him the picture. The picture was from 2 years prior, supposedly. And when he
Yeah.
went out there, the tracks, were still there in pristine condition. Uh, the tree breaks, he could see the sawdust from, from where they sawed the bottom of it near the roots, like we would do. They're not
Yeah.
thinking that these things, are grabbing these trees and just breaking them with their own power. So, and that's another reason why I wanted to have you on, just because you're a very staunch and headstrong decapitator of hoaxers, and I admire that to no end.
Well, as I said to you, anyone that I've called out as a hoax, I am more than happy, and I'll say it now online. If you want to come on and defend yourself on this show, I'm more than happy to be here. You name the
And this
time and
show
the
would be
place, and I
this
will
show
be
would host
here,
that
and
if
we will
somebody would.
discuss it. And you can tell me why I am wrong, and if I am wrong, I will apologise. But remember, I save every message and I screenshot everything.
Yeah, I mean, that, and not only that, you're selling yourself short. You play Dick Tracy.
Yeah,
You play you're a good cop, bad cop, all in one vessel. Like you give them enough rope to hang themselves, like you did with that guy. I forget his name, but you almost like placated his overpowered ego in a way,
because
just
that's
to
what
get a
hoaxes
little
are.
bit more out of him. I mean, that was
That's
great.
exactly what hoaxes are. Hoaxes want to be known, and they want this. I
For
don't
the
know if
wrong
you have
reason.
in the here we have a story about this king who walked down the road with no clothes on, but because he told all his subjects he was wearing them, they all believed him. Hoaxing is basically that. It's I want to be noticed. Yeah, so it's very easy when you say, "Oh, you're wonderful, you're fantastic. Tell me more about it. Tell me what you did. Tell me that." And then they befriend you, and then they always turn around and they say, "Well, actually, I made it all up, to be honest." And I've seen it go even worse than that. I've seen them blame other people and say, "No, oh no, it wasn't me. It was the other person who I was on the show with." So I will send that message to the other person who was on the show because a lot of people say I'm a busybody. I'm not a busybody. If you're out there and you're lying, well, I'm going to find, if I find you, I'm going to say to you, look, I know that you're lying, and this is how I know that you're lying, and this is the evidence that I have. So you either go away and you stop lying to people, or I'm just going to put the evidence out there and people can make their mind up for themselves. I don't get involved in all the argument that goes on in the drama. I just present what I've collected, and you can make your own mind up then whether you think, that they're hoaxing you or not. Not everybody. I have shown people evidence and they have still carried on to send money or whatever it is that the person's asking for. Um, and in
And
the
that's
UK,
phenomenal. I mean, you just said it. You just said it. You bring forth the evidence of why it isn't what they claim. They're presenting falsehoods and nonsense as evidence to a
because it's
community, in
people
my
like
opinion, that
you,
the majority of them just want to understand.
people like you are out there week in, week out. They take time off from the families. It's all on your own pocket. You don't ask for anything. You do this in the hopes that you'll come to some kind of understanding and you can
Yes,
share
ma'am.
that understanding with other people. One
Absolutely.
bad apple takes all that away. You know,
I agree
there's one.
wholeheartedly.
There's one in the
That's
UK.
what's scary to me. That's what's scary to me, that these people somebody would perpetuate such a big hoax that not just me, but everybody who's out there, countless people. And it's not just somebody who's wandering through the woods with a camera. It's the people who are actually building up databases, that they want to share and draw comparisons from other researchers. All that can be thrown out of the window because of one of these knuckleheads.
Exactly. We've got researchers here. I can name them: Charmaine Fraser, Catherine Research, John Chick, Stu Hall, Guy Marshall. Out week in, week out, they'll go and speak to the witnesses. They'll go and check areas. If prints come in, they're out there. They're doing it. There's many more than the people I've just named. They're just a few off the top of my head that I can think of at the moment. Lots and lots of people in the UK giving up their time to talk to witnesses, to collect data, to get out there and find out. A lot of them take part in Project Go and See. They don't get any recognition. The people that get the recognition are the ones saying, it's going to attack you, it's going to kill you. I've had this letter off my friend, and my friend claims this. Well, show us the letter then. Let's have a look at this letter, because I can show you every letter that's ever been sent to me. Well, I can't do it because that's like not showing the privacy. We'll put a block light where the name is and then show us the letter, It's really easy. Nobody at any point says, oh, well done, Catherine, for getting out there and doing it, Well done, Guy, for getting out there and doing it. Let's give your channel a like. Let's subscribe. Let's give you a shout out. No. All the concentration goes on, the initial, I've had a sighting and I was nearly attacked and killed. And that's built up into this massive feeding frenzy. And then people go, oh, I don't want to go. I'm not going out to the woods this weekend. I've seen, no, I'm not doing it. But then you've also got the researchers who go, oh, I'm not doing it anymore. What is the point? What is the point in me going out week after week after week if they can lie like that to 1,000 people in a weekend? Why should I bother? And then it also affects the witnesses because they think, I don't want to be associated with that. I want to tell you my sighting quietly, calmly, in a place that feels comfortable.
And anonymously a lot of the times, right?
Yeah, anonymously a lot of the times. I don't put every sighting on the map. People think I do. I don't. I ask the witnesses permission. I don't put anything in the blog until I've said, are you okay if I put this out there? Or are you okay if I add this to the map? And if they say, no, I'm not okay, then I don't add it. Because it's not for anyone's entertainment. It's a personal, private event that has happened to that person. And it will probably change them for the rest of their life. And it's the people that they talk to that determine whether that change is positive or negative. Right. So that's all. Like
I admire the hell out of you, Deborah. I mean, I'm not to keep tooting your horn, but like when I seen what you did to that guy, and then I started like researching you personally and saw that immaculate map that you put together. I mean, there's a lot of dots on that map. There's
a lot of dots on that map. There isn't there? A lot of dots on that. People don't believe it. I don't get into drama anymore. The minute people start trolling me, I just show them a picture of the map. Explain that. Explain it. Even if 90% of those sightings on that map are made up, right? That leads that they say 50 accounts, and that's right. No, there'd be more than that, wouldn't there? It's. Why did they tell the same tale? Why did they give the same description? Why did they say the same hunched walk, the same lumbering gait, the same? He walked off into the trees. He just lumbered up into the trees. He went back
from Leif Erikson in America, and I think it was 986 AD, all the way to now. We have these similarities.
Exactly.
I mean, you can't discount that. There's just no way.
You can't turn person after person after person away. If somebody comes to you and says that door's red and you say, no, it's not, it's blue, that's a difference of opinion. But when 46 people tell you that door's red and you say, no, it's blue, then you're just being a stubborn idiot and you need to have another look with a clean set of eyes, why have they taken the time to come and tell you? So even if 20 of them have lied and made it up or whatever, you're still left with the 26 that didn't. It could probably do with a friend at that moment. And, I know a place where you can go. I have a little secret group on Facebook that nobody knows about. And it has about 20 people in it, that's all. And that is simply so that the witnesses can come in and out whenever they want and talk to each other without anybody telling them that they're hysterical. I don't care about clicks and likes. And it doesn't bother me. It really doesn't bother me. I've been the girl that sees monsters my entire life. So I have quite a thick skin now. And you and Chris were chatting, and you said that in the beginning, all that drama, you kind of play into it, don't you? And you try and get your point across.
Yeah, I mean,
And then,
and that's it draws you in because like when you feel like you're paying into me especially because I'm kind of surly by nature anyways. Like I'm being
I'm
attacked,
like
but
that. I'm a bit like, I'm a bit like that. And it to me, and then I thought, well, what's the point? A big thing for me was a lady came forward and she contacted Thomas Markham from the Crypto Crew, and it was 20 odd year after I had my sighting, but she came forward and said, I finally need to tell you that I saw the same thing that Deborah saw, and I know that Deborah's not lying, and I saw him in exactly the same place 2 years later, same description. It's been on my conscience for a long time that I've never come forward and helped her. That closed the door for me. I thought it doesn't matter anymore what anybody thinks. It doesn't matter. My family are okay with it. My husband's fine with it.
right.
It doesn't matter what anybody else thinks. As long as it doesn't bring any drama to my children, it's time for me to stick my head above the parapet and say, I saw something so extraordinary in the UK that for 35 years I have never stopped thinking about it. And that's all I can offer you as proof of what I have seen. But you can
Well,
tell
you're like
me,
again, you're selling yourself short. You, for everyone who's interested in cryptozoology in the UK, for everyone who's had a sighting, for everyone who wants to do what you do and what I do and what countless other people do out in the field, you have I mean, you're a trailblazer in my opinion. Like you're right, there were people that came before you, but they didn't have the organization, in my opinion. I mean, this is me speaking as a
yeah.
Yankee, and I know I'm not a Yankee, but that's what. Yeah, I shouldn't have
American.
said that. I'm a Southerner, proud Southerner.
There you go.
But you did a whole lot for the field in general in your neck of the woods. I mean, that's something to be proud of.
Oh, yeah, I am incredibly proud of it. I am. But
You should be.
to me, I am just a housewife. I'm just a mum. And this is something I do on the side. And people don't seem to understand that there's a whole other part to Deborah Hatswell that people don't know, and don't see, because they think that the only interest I have in life is Bigfoot. And it's not my only interest, you see. But it's something.
Right. I know exactly what you're
I
saying.
have other interests, but it's something. It's only because I've been doing it longer. I think it's just that I know people in the UK that have only just started. They're probably 2 or 3 months into it, and it's clicked really quickly for them. But I know others that have been at it years and years and years, and they just can't seem to get it. And I think people are different. And it's different for different people, isn't it? And I always say that
Absolutely.
you learn at your own rate. So somebody might find it incredibly easy, and other people find it incredibly hard. And I have been wrong a million times. What I thought in '86 is not what I think now. So yeah, just trust your instincts and just go with them. And you'll be fine as a researcher. You'll find your own way. You'll find your own feet, and that's
Yes,
all
ma'am.
I offer people is a choice. I just say, this is what I saw, that's what you saw, and this is what some people believe, and other people believe this, and somewhere between the two, you'll find your answers. So, this you've got a choice. You can go out and you can look on the ground, or you can just speak to other witnesses, or you can stay completely silent and just watch from the sidelines, whatever your comfort zone is. And it used to be, I'll
That's
just sit.
fantastic to me that you even say that. Being a veteran researcher yourself. When I started over here, there were other veteran researchers. Like I said, I was the naive kid basically, thinking that all these veteran researchers would be there applauding me on. I was told going into my area of Brown Springs in southern Oklahoma that I was better off swimming with sharks. What's that to say to somebody who's had a sighting and then within 2 months he's had multiple sightings in the same area, you know, and
People
he,
who haven't had sightings are experts. They're absolute experts on everything. They're the people who ask you, why didn't you take a photograph? Dee? Why didn't you film it? Why didn't you get a frequently asked
right,
question sheet of it and fill out all the answers? Because your blood starts pumping and you're not thinking about anything else apart from getting away from what is standing directly in front of you. So I bet that guy had never even been to your home state that told you that. If he'd ever left, if he'd ever left his mum's spare room at all, I don't know. But there are a lot of keyboard warriors out there who know for a fact. I know for a fact that they do this, and I know for a fact that they do that. It just tickles me that I think, well, I don't. I've been at this like forever, and I still have a lot, like as many questions as I had back then. How you have your normal ones, don't you? Where do they live? What do they eat?
Right.
Is there water?
Yeah, the atypical that you hear.
Yeah, but how can anyone be an expert on that? That's like saying I know everything that a Chinese person does. Absolutely everything they do, every single one of them, even though all the personalities are different and they've all been brought up in different families. It's just a silly thing to say, isn't it? It's better to say, well, this is what I found studying this group of, like you say, you're basing your research on your group, and that's the way to do it. You find your area and you get to know that area inside out. And it doesn't matter if somebody tells you to go 2,000 miles away or 8,000 miles away. You find your area and you work that area yourself, because you will notice things that nobody else will notice. And
absolutely. Thank you for saying that. That's the only reason why I've tackled this small pocket of forest this entire time, because it would do me no good to jump from Texas to Kansas to Arkansas, back to Oklahoma, over to New Mexico. No. I want to understand the creatures. So I want to understand one group which represents, as we were talking about earlier, with the stick, it represents the entire, whether you call it race or species, in my opinion. So if I can understand this one tribe or family pod just a little bit better.
Yeah, a relationship is what you're trying to form. A relationship we're both quite happy with and comfortable with will go a hell of a lot longer than somebody who sneaks in camo with an intent.
Or goes and has like beer bashes, and basically just camps out in the area for 3 or 4 days, with cameras. Just because and this is one thing that, I want to get straight with people. Just because you go into the woods with a camera, in my opinion, that doesn't make you a researcher or a field investigator. And I mean, the only reason this comes to mind is because of the immaculate system of notes that I've kept. Yeah. And when I tell somebody about it, the question mark comes above their head. It kind of makes me mad in a way. It's like, yeah, I mean, of course I have notes and journals. Like, don't you? You're a researcher too.
I understand that exactly because of the map. Doesn't everybody make a map? It's like, to me, what is the point of listening to all these accounts from all across the world and not pinpointing them so we can look at the area? Google Maps is a wonderful thing. You can see if there's a river in the area, what the topography is like, what habitat. For instance, we had a sighting not too long ago in the Ribble Valley, and I thought, the Ribble Valley, it's as flat. And it's basically on the coastline, and I thought, what a strange area. So I've seen something. Until I went on the ground and looked. And when I went on the ground and looked, there was a river that snaked through a stream, and it was heavily wooded. And all the flat areas were food fields. They were fields planted with crops.
That's what I call prime real estate.
So if I hadn't have taken the time to go and do a bit of ground and look and see who was on that area, I could have been the expert thing of gone, I am poo-pooing that sighting because I've looked on my map and it can't possibly be true. Yeah? It doesn't work like that, does it? I had to go and look at the area and think, well, I could hide in there and I could walk this route at night. And the minute it was dusk, there's ducks, there's chickens, there's food everywhere. I'm looking, there's food. It was like a one-stop shop, a 7-Eleven, as you say in America. Everything you needed was in that area. And there was an old abandoned train line that ran in, and that had been left to nature, so it was completely covered. And it would have been very easy to nip in from the woods about 4 or 5 miles away, nip in, get what you need, and nip back out again. And it made perfect sense to me. But if I'd have listened to somebody who said to me, there's no point, Deborah, don't go and look in a field, I would have discounted it, wouldn't I? So like back to what I'm saying, trust your gut. Just trust your gut and go with it. Think, well, all right, they're telling me it's not right, but I feel that if I follow that sign, it will lead me to water. So just go and look. It either will or it won't. You're not losing anything, are you? But if it does, write it down. Like you, write it down.
Absolutely. Even benign things that don't seem like they may be significant. Like if you hear something that may sound like a tree knock, but it could be a woodpecker, write it down in as much detail as you could, because it's going to happen again.
Yeah, I look for really strange things. I suppose you do when you're in the car. I would imagine when you're driving, you're looking out and you're looking for X's and
yeah. I guess that's like just a thing that comes along with it, because I thought I was nuts.
I look for everywhere I go. It must annoy people. I go, that's an edible. That's an edible. That's an edible. You can get sap off that. You can eat that. That you can use the bark on. And I look for them when I'm in an area. I look for birch trees because everybody taps birch sap. I thought everybody tapped birch sap, and apparently they don't, do they? But it's like, like when you buy maple syrup, that is basically fructose and a bit of food colouring. Well, that natural syrup, right? Well, that natural syrup, that comes out of a birch tree. So if you just tap the bark and make a knot in it or something, just make a mark in it, it'll run that sap all day, and you can fill a cup up, and you can drink it like an isotonic drink, or you can boil it up and make maple syrup, that kind of thing. So I notice things like that when I'm out as well, because I think they're important, because he must know a million times more than me on what's a medicine, what you can eat, what you can use to cure this, what will make a poultice.
You said that a little bit earlier, Deborah, and I think that's extremely important. Like, these creatures, I think they do suffer from illnesses of some sort.
But they have a natural treatment.
Right. They know root systems and herbs and natural remedies better than we could, I think, possibly imagine.
I read a study with Jane Goodall, and she said that chimpanzees will feed the young when they're teething. They will give them what we would call a willow, but the African version of that, because there's anisin in willow. It's a natural painkiller. So if the small baby was running a fever or was teething, then they would feed it the leaves from that plant. So how do they know that plant cures pain and fever? But they do know, and I suppose it's just passed on.
Gorilla, yeah. And in my mind, I think a gorilla is just a little bit down from just the knowledge or intellectual level of the Sasquatch.
I seen another article that I saw. I think it was Ian Redmond that shared it. And it was poachers were setting traps for gorillas, and young juvenile gorillas were following around behind them and letting the traps off and taking them away. So they must have evolved that over the last 30 or 40 years. That they have worked out that trap, that smell or that colour coming into the forest is a bad thing. So whereas they're not being able to catch them in the way that they used to catch them anymore, because they're using their brains to outwit us. I just think we put, I don't think we give them enough credit for, you get your ape chasers.
No, yeah, we don't give them nearly enough credit.
Because like the ape chasers will say, oh, well, that doesn't happen because apes build a bed. And I think this is not an ape we're dealing with.
No, people are setting themselves up, in my opinion. They're setting themselves up for failure.
They'd be in a zoo. If they were just an ape and we could track them like just an ape, they would be in the zoo.
Yeah, absolutely. And whoever found them, their statue would be up at the Smithsonian Institute up there, and we get to go see the exhibits. We'd know exactly what it is and why they are, and
what every organ did, because we'd have them on a table and we'd dissect them and we'd tell you what each organ did. The amount of people say we need a body, we need to have a body. If we don't have a body, how can we know Bigfoot exists? Well, you don't have a body.
We want a body. Yeah,
exactly.
We want a body. We don't need one.
To prove to myself that there is a creature on this earth. That's like saying I was in the Amazon and I'm sure I saw a person. Oh no, you can't have done. There's no tribes in that area. Well, I think I did. Well, I'll tell you what, go and kill one and bring it back, and then we'll believe you. That's the mentality. And
it's but we're the as they would call the civilized culture on this planet.
Yeah.
And that's
yeah. I'm sorry for laughing, but yeah, well,
it's funny. It's hysterical to me. And the thing is, like Jane Goodall, actually believe that this creature was out there.
She did. She said she hoped with all of her heart that it existed, because then there would be hope for the human race, which I think is a wonderful sentence. Because if we could learn how they exist in clans and what they use to heal themselves and how they go about spreading seeds around the world, we could benefit from that in such a way. And we're blind to it because, like you say, scientists does not want to know. They don't want to know. They're not interested.
No.
There's nothing. You're not going to get a Nobel Prize for proving there's a Bigfoot. You see, so there's no interest in it, is there? None at all.
Well, in Deborah, my only, well, it's not my only fear. It's one of them with this creature. Actually, that they're having disclosure of some sort.
Yeah.
Is we are an exploitive, malicious race.
Yeah, I have the same fear.
We try to put these things in zoos.
Mm.
I mean, there'd be.
It is a moral dilemma, isn't it? When you
Yeah.
research it and you think, I think it a lot. I think, am I doing them more harm than good by? That's something I struggle with a lot, Dee, actually. I'm glad you brought that up.
It's something I think about as well.
I do worry that, you know, if I put them in the public eye too much, could that have a really, you know, bad effect on them? You know, in the UK, they'd be like Frankenstein villagers with the torches, you know, chasing it into the woods to try and kill it and things. And that does worry me, I'll be honest. But then I think, well, they've managed to elude us, haven't they, all this time? And they do play tricks on us, and they must think that we are the you know, the dumb apes kind of thing. Because
I bet they do. You know, somebody told me that. I'm sorry. What'd you say, Deborah?
They dance around us, you know, and we're blinkered and we can't see what's going on at all. And even if we can, we've got no interest in it, really, have we? So I just think they use that to their advantage. I don't think they're as hidden as we think they are. We wouldn't get the sightings that are close to town.
Well, we think too much.
Do you have bike routes in America? I don't know what we call them. We call them the biking here. They're like routes that run through cities, and they're left alone for cyclists to use or nature corridors like that. Well, we have
bigger cities.
Yeah, we have them from the top of the UK to the bottom of the UK, and they're throughout the rural areas as well. And they're left to nature. They don't get tended very much, and there aren't any lights on them. And I've been in an area in Bath. I've been able to line up the sightings with the actual bike route. So I thought, that's really strange. I'll see if that happens anywhere else. And it did. There was quite a few that fitted in. So then I looked in the national press, and it said that they'd found lots of vandalisation on some of the more rural bike routes where huge tree trunks had been pushed over onto the path to block the way, or really big, heavy boulders had been moved without machinery onto the paths to keep people out. And I thought, I wonder if it's them. Is that one of their areas and they don't want us going through that area? And when I looked, there was lots and lots of reports in different towns and counties across the UK of similar things happening on the bike routes. And I thought they must utilise whatever they can where they know a human's not going to be, because we've forced them into these little channels now. That's all they've got left, you know, to skirt the sounds and get around the sounds. And I wondered if it was the same in America.
I think so. I don't know about so much the biking routes, because you have a whole lot more, even though it's a way smaller country. I think there's a whole lot more rural. If you were to blow them up both on a map, you know what I mean? Like Scotland's very green.
Yeah, that's what people don't understand. I think they think the UK is like London. And that London is just London. That's just one town.
Yeah, London is all of England.
That's what people think, yeah. And it's not. It's not like that at all. We tend to live in little conurbations, as we call them. We have little village towns, and they have like a mall in them. And out from that, you'll get lots of little towns. But in between that, it's mostly fields and woods and golf courses and places like that. It's really green. I met with the Finding Bigfoot people in 2015. And I didn't go in the show in the end because they wanted me to the copyright over the map, and I wasn't prepared to do it.
Whoa. Slow down. I want everybody to hear that part. If you would repeat that, please.
Right. Well, The terrible Finding Bigfoot program on the UK, and I'm glad we're speaking about it because it really needs to put into bed this issue. They only contacted one research group, and that research group was up in the north. And that research group believes, I don't know if they believe it now, but at the time, that it was only in the north. It wasn't anywhere else in the UK. So I contacted them and I said, I've made a map of, I think it was around 300 sightings then, of 300 accounts across the UK. And if you want to use it for the programme to find an area, because they do, don't they? They look for a decent area where there's a cluster. And they go, and I thought that I'd be doing them a favour. They're coming over to the UK to a place where people haven't heard of Bigfoot and expecting witnesses to come forward, and people in the UK are not like that. If you have to drive for more than an hour in the UK, that's a day out. Yeah, we don't drive for more than an hour. Everything is 20 minutes away. There is one part of the UK where you can cross it in 30 minutes from the east coast to the west coast. We're only little. So, but what they did was they did the Finding Bigfoot right up in the north. So none of the southern witnesses were listened to. No one from Scotland knew about it. Nobody knew anything about it. And then they said, oh, we'll come out and we'll have a look at your sighting location with you. And they did that. And he kept saying to me, where do you buy your food from? Where's the shops? Where, And I said, well, everything's like this in the UK. This is how we live. There is somewhere where I can go to buy food, but I can also order it online and they'll deliver it. It's not, it's not the end of the world. I'd much rather that than you build a supermarket on that field, if you don't mind. But I thought maybe America's, I've never been to America, so it must be much different. I don't know. But he couldn't get over how green everything was. But to cut a long story short, then they got back to me and said, right, we want you on your own to travel to Chester-le Street, which is about 200 miles away. I've no car at the time. There's about 120 quid on the train. And the only hotel you can stay in is like a 5-star posh hotel. Well, I am not a rich woman. So I said, I can't possibly afford to do that off my own back. But you're more than happy to use the map, I don't mind. And then they said, right, well, we want you to sign over the copyright. And I was like, no, I'm not prepared to do that. I don't mind you using it.
The hard work that you've put in over decades, talking to witnesses on the ground.
Something like 42,000 hits on that map or something. And I thought, they'll make money off it, won't they? They'll charge you to look at the map.
And that's something we kind of talked about off air, And I'm not singling that group out, but the profiteers,
Well, to me, at that point, I thought this is about money. This is so they can open a franchise here, British Bigfoot on T-shirts and all, because nobody does that in the UK. It's not copywritten, is it?
So it's still like gangbusters, I'd imagine.
It's just not. There's not. I thought, this is going to be really bad. This is going to turn into a money-making thing where people are going to be come for the weekend and chase Bigfoots through the woods. And I thought that is definitely not what I want. I don't mind people going out on their own and having a look in the woods and seeing what they can find.
Absolutely. You're like me. I encourage people to, I tell people, don't take my word for it. Go fact check me, go into the areas where you have hot spots, in your neck of the woods.
And don't just go to the sighting area, because that creature would have had to walk in and walk out. And that's the route.
And they have long strides.
Yeah. And I also think that if you were seen in an area, I don't think you'd be in that area as much, would you, for a while? Just in case you were seen again, you take a different route. So I always say, find 3 sightings and triangulate them and look in the middle of that triangle, because they must be moving around in that area. There will be small rivers and streams, and see if you can use those, I call them the green corridors, those green corridors to get from one sighting to the other. And it was something I challenged myself with a lot when I very first started out. There's a guy called Ian, and he lives in Yorkshire, and his sighting it's one of my favourites, because he's out with a dog and he sees this huge, what he described as the thing off Sasquatch Chronicles years later when we were talking. He said, Debbie, I found a picture of it. It's this. And I said, oh, I know what you mean. He said, well, that's exactly what I saw. And he walked out of the tree line, and he was so shocked at what he saw. He said, all right, and let on to it, and carried on walking. And it didn't do anything. He said it looked back in the trees as if to say whoever was in the trees not to come out. But it just stood stock still like a tree, as if it wasn't there. And the dog was going mental trying to get it. So he was more worried about getting the dog away. And he said it was only when he got home that he realised he should have been scared. Now, if he'd have listened to all those radio shows and all those accounts and attacks, that sighting would have been a
Right.
hell of a lot different for him, wouldn't it?
I
How
believe so.
comfy was it, you know, to say hello? Well, he said, I said, all right, sweet dad, because that's what they say in Yorkshire, so, all right. And he carried on going. And I think I love that sighting because it's real and it's
Absolutely.
true. And not everybody acts in that way, do they?
No, yeah,
So,
yeah. You hear the sightings of, oh well, Sasquatch came screeching, swinging himself from tree to tree,
yeah,
bloodshot eyes. You know,
got a baby under one arm and a machete in the other. Yeah, you
yeah,
do, don't
exactly.
you? And he ripped off the dog's head and he threw
Yeah, it's
it.
all these accounts that are bananas. Like, you know, there are some where I do think there are rogue ones, and I've talked to many people about this before. And these creatures, I do believe, will excommunicate
Yeah,
sick or
yeah.
maybe potential alpha males who would challenge that the
Yeah,
large alpha
I
male who would be
agree.
in charge of the tribe. There, I think those kind of sightings, those can become violent or not so even so much violent but aggressive.
Yeah, yeah,
Where
I
they rush
agree
at them
entirely. And
buck
any
charges.
animal, even a passive animal, cornered, will show aggression, as would
Absolutely.
we. Yeah,
But I
or
don't think
maybe,
that every encounter is that.
and that
I
can
think those are
depend.
actually kind of rare.
You know, I have a great thing about intent. I say intent is a lot of your research because if you go in and you're open
Right.
and you have that open feeling about you, even an animal like a dog can sense or see a body language that to them they see as threatening and will attack. And you think that that's a crazy rabid dog, but it might have been something that you did, not being used to dogs, that set it off. And I think nobody ever discusses that part of it. If you
Right.
ask some of these witnesses, you could say, "Were you in camo? Did you have a weapon? You know, did you sneak in stealth?"
I think
Because
the weapon thing's really important.
yeah, but
I
it's
think these
intent.
creatures know what weapons are, guns especially.
Well, actually, they must do, mustn't they? I mean, they must do, and they must. But you can pick up on you yourself will meet somebody and pick up on their body language and know that they're just not right. There's just something about
Right.
them that you don't want to be
Yeah, I've
around.
told people like you have a newborn baby that goes to everybody, smiles, is happy. You bring
Mm.
around a second cousin that doesn't come around all that often. I mean, it's falling in the floor trying to jump away from them.
Exactly. And they must be able to pick on up on that too, on that body
Right.
language, on those paralinguistics that you put out there about yourself that you don't realize that you're doing. So sometimes I think maybe we do something without realizing, not on purpose, by accident, that makes them feel threatened in some way. Or we could have got between a mother and a child and not realized. So when she's
Yeah, and
throwing
I
those
think that's a
stones
lot of
or
it.
breaking that log, that might not be to physically attack you. That might be because she's frightened to death because you're between her and her young. And I would act exactly the same if I
Right. Go
felt that.
bananas. Yeah.
Yeah, if you feel that your young are in jeopardy from something that looks powerful and he's carrying a weapon, whether she knows it's going to fire or not, he can hit her with it. He's given this presence of frightened. If it's someone like me who's just hobbling along, because I have problems with my mobility, I'm hobbling along and I talk out loud and I'm picking things as I go. I'm not seen as any threat whatsoever because I'm open and you can tell that I'm just there to enjoy the day. I'm not there to harm or hurt
Absolutely.
anyone. She will probably feel a little bit comfortable with the fact that I'm probably going to walk right past and not even notice this baby, and she wouldn't show herself. I think sometimes we've put an aggression on them that we've caused. It is what I'm trying to say. We view the
And I
situation
couldn't agree
there.
more.
Yeah, we view the situation from a human type mind, you know. And it's I've had them where they said, "Well, it threw stones at me," and I say, "I bet they didn't hit you, did they? I bet they landed near you." And they say, "Well, yeah."
Exactly. Yeah.
And I say, "Well, he would
And then,
believe me. If he wanted to hit you, he would hit you. That's
and
just
you'd
to
be
get
hurt
you to move.
bad.
That's to get you to
Yeah.
move away." Well, aggressive animals don't use distraction tactics. A lion will
Well,
not try and
the
distract.
only time I've ever had rocks thrown at me, and that goes back to the whole interpreting the situation you're in.
Mm.
Um, I was. This is when I became comfortable with the area. I was in with the two youngest boys. We didn't even go that far, but we heard one of the adolescents growl, and I could tell it was an adolescent because it sounded like a little kid trying to be like a monster.
Yeah,
And I said, "Okay, it's all right. We'll come back tomorrow." And right when we got back to the trail that I use, which is an unusual trail for the area, I felt a rock hit my heel. And I turned back and, all that movement and stuff, everything it went dead silent. And I stood there for a moment, kind of assessed the situation, moved forward slowly a little bit. I said, you know what? It's all right. And I went further that day with the kids, especially than I ever have. And everything was very, very pleasant.
Oh, but
So I think it's
you're giving this
interpreting
impression you're relaxed and you're comfortable and you've got your children with you and you're just out enjoying the day.
right. And I think that was them saying, hey, we're sorry. Come back.
Well, it
have
might
fun.
have been. Realize you had the kids with you.
That's how I interpret it. Yeah.
Yeah, but
I think they're interested. They know that their children are adolescents too.
Of course, because
maybe that's a way they were playing or something with them.
Yeah, I mean, as children, you throw stones at each other, don't you? How many stone walls? You don't see that as aggressive, do you? It's like you throw a stone and your friend throws a stone, and eventually it gets out of hand, and one of you ends up in hospital. And you do that between siblings. It's just children playing, isn't it?
Absolutely. I don't ever want any of the children to be afraid of that area or to be afraid of the situation. So that's why the growl was so silly and comical of like, yeah, it was weird. Like, okay, let's go.
If your mind had jumped straight to threat, you would have interpreted that as a threat. But because you're logical and you can minimize it and you can say, he maybe might have been trying it out on you. He might not have even seen you, and he's just done this growl out of, he's practicing, he's trying to get his big male voice going. We don't know what behind the interaction, do we? We only have what we have, that little snippet in time to try and base it on, and it's really hard. And getting back to whoever you speak to then has an influence of how you interpret that encounter.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so if you'd gone to someone
that
like
added more conjecture to the research, the rock throwing thing, it's not always aggressive, You
do hear of accounts where they laugh, don't you, and giggle. And I've got lots of them.
That's creepy. That's the creepiest thing I've encountered in there. And I think it's the adolescents, but it's like a cackling.
I heard an old man, like, I'd never moved so fast in my life, but the situation was funny. And I think he laughed because he caught him off guard. I'd been out for a bit, and there was one bit that I could go to, and it was miles. It's not miles out, but there's not many people in it. And I go at a certain time of day, and know I'm okay. I can't do the woods at night. I've never been able to since my sighting. So once it gets to dusk, I have to come in. But it's late afternoon. It's a really nice day.
Understandable.
And I'm there and I'm looking and I'm doing what I always do, and I'm foraging about and I'm picking a few herbs and everything. And I just like you do, I bent down. I didn't realise there was a bough above my head. So as I came up, I bumped my head on the bough and I swore, right? So I was like, hell, like that. And this from behind me, from the left, in the really thick bushes, this thing went like that. And I said, without thinking, oh, did you find that funny? And then realisation hit that somebody was stood in the bushes to the left of me, and off I went. I was gone. But I was terrified from a laugh because something laughed out loud. But I interpreted that of, oh, he's there, he can get me. That was back in the olden days when I thought he was a monster. But now, I think now I'd be able to hold my ground, and I'd probably joke along with him and say, well, I'm glad you found that funny for your entertainment, but, I'm going to move on now because I think I'm slightly injured. But I've done everything, mate. I've done everything from the gifting. I've tried the gifting thing. I've done the on-ground research.
I've tried gifting. That's one thing. I tried the, I left the jar of peanut butter. Didn't want anything to do with it. But and one of these days I will release. I didn't know how to feel about it because it got a goat. And I go into the deep pockets of a wooded area. There's no goats rummaging about, where I go. I went back one day, the first day, to see if it messed with it. They hadn't touched it at all. I opened it up, stuck my finger in it like in an exaggerated way, and tasted it. So they could see that, hey, I'm not trying to hurt you. And after I came back, and this was like a couple of days later, there was a goat left in that trail with its head twisted around backwards, and it looked like something had like half gutted it. I think so. I took it that way, and it's like, hey, we're not going to eat this trash that you eat, but we understand the gesture.
I see it differently. I don't think do you know when the Native Americans gift? It's not the gift, it's the giving of the gift. So it's not the peanut butter, it's the fact you left the peanut butter for them.
I see what you're saying.
So, like, could offer you leather because leather was useful to you, and you can choose whether to accept it or not. But the fact that I offered it meant a lot.
Right.
And I think that's the important part of gifting.
I didn't think about it in Native American terms because a lot, especially in the Northeast, you know, somebody would give a bushel of corn and they'd come back and give 2 whole deer. You know,
Exactly.
the gift that was given back was more significant.
Because it's the gesture of giving the gift. It's like saying it's not the gift, it's the thought that counts. And that's, I think, where we're mixing up. We're giving them
I never
something.
thought about that.
We're expecting them to eat it or do with it what we would do. You wouldn't eat something if you came in your house and found it on the chair, would you?
No.
Because you don't know. Wouldn't. Well, why expect them to do the same? I say that to people quite a lot.
Right.
I know quite a few people who've had success with really strange things like beeswax, leather laces, natural things made of wood, like natural wooden spoons and things like that, where they've left them and they have been taken, but they've left foodstuffs and the foodstuffs have rotted and just been left.
What's your thoughts on it? You know, you've been doing this for a very, very long time. A lot of people say that, like the peanut butter thing and stuff like that, that it's a bad idea because you're habituating an animal. As you know, these things don't, there's no just when you're in that deep pocket of forest, there's not just one individual, there's many, in my opinion.
Yeah, I don't think they need our food, personally. I don't think food's the way to go. When I tell people to gift, I say, tell them out loud what you're doing and say, I've come and I'm just leaving this here for you and it's up to you whether you take it or not. I just wanted to show you that I was here and that I was grateful and, you know, thanks. I always take rubbish home with me as well. If I find any rubbish when I'm there, I put it in a bag.
Oh, me too.
Take it out with me. So I never say, oh, go and gift or go and try it. I'll say to people, a gift, it's not the actual gift, like I was saying before, it's the thought. So leaving stones in a line is a gift. It's an interaction for them. They can either choose to change those stones, feathers, seashells, anything you feel like, where you're not habituating them, you're not bringing them in for food, because it could be squirrels and rabbits and raccoons that are eating that food. And without a camera, you've no way of knowing that, have you really? So gift with something. Like I'll give you, for instance, an example. Somebody sent me some photographs the other day and they said, I think they're leaving glyph signs for me, but they don't look like anything I've seen before. So I said, well, first of all, you're guessing that they know your language and how you write an A or write a B or whatever it is that you do. And you're guessing that they have the same language as everyone else on the internet. What I think you should do is leave a sign yourself and say hello and see if that sign repeats. I said, and every time you leave that sign, say the same word. So she gets back to me the day after and she said, I've got up this morning and the hello sign's on my doormat.
These creatures.
It's not.
Uh-oh.
So it wasn't a gift. It wasn't like a food item.
I thought we lost you there for a moment. That'd have been terrible.
Oh, sorry.
No. Yeah, it was in the internet, I think. Little glitch.
She I don't know where you heard me up to. Basically, she made a sign and said, this sign means home to me. Hello. This sign means hello. And she repeated it over a number of days. And then after a number of days, she found the exact same sign on her doorstep. So that was as if to say, we recognise that this is your sign now for hello. And I said to her, we expect them to be mind readers. We expect them to know everything.
Well, you know, according to some, Deborah, yeah, they are mind readers.
According to some, they are. But, like, people have skills on different levels. What's to say that they're not? I wouldn't imagine a 2-year-old is on the same psychic level as someone that's been here for 500 years. A lot of learning's gone on between.
You said it earlier. I think that it's
then and now.
They're reading body language. Somehow they can tell intent. You know, if you're in there kicking through their structures and nests, they're probably not going to have much to do with you. No. And what I found early on, especially in a highly active area like I'm in, if you sit and look at their structures that they've built for an inordinate amount of time, like you're admiring it, that brings them in kind of close. They're kind of wondering, like, wait a minute, this guy, what is he looking at that so intently for? Does he know that that's...
Yeah, why?
Yeah, exactly.
There's lots of things I think you can do to put them at ease. You could wear the same item each time, whether it be a hat or a scarf or whatever, so that they start to recognise that item. And that marks you out from anyone new in the area, doesn't it? I think that, and I think if it's a bright item, it gives the opinion that you're not trying to hide. So you're quite happy to walk around with your bright orange hat on, or your rainbow coloured hat on, or whatever. And you don't have to be a flute player to do that. What you're giving them is a sign of, this is me, this is the coat that I wear when I come through. And that would build over time, I think would build a little ease on their behalf, whereas he's not frightening. You know, he's going to come in, he's going to look at the trees, he's going to sit down. I always say to people, if it's something you do, like art or writing or anything, do it while you're there, because you give off that feeling of being really comfortable and happy and quite happy to be there. I think you get farther doing that than sticking a camera up or
I agree, and a lot of researchers say always have a camera rolling, and they said that I was crazy to go out sometimes without a camera, but I don't want. Like I always tell people, I don't know where their cognitive thinking begins and ends. So I'd go out there and just act casual sometimes. I'd take a little stroll, not all the way through the area, but I'd take out the family. You know what I mean? I'd go and I'd sit on a log and smoke cigarettes and whistle.
Exactly. Just be at ease. Just do what you want to do when you're out there, because you don't find them, they find you. You can look all day long, and if they are comfortable around you and they don't feel that you're a threat, then maybe they might show themselves. Like you say, they show themselves to you, don't they? Because they're used to you, but they still keep a lot of themselves hidden.
Right. They only come within, I can walk upon them sometimes and, not know that they're there. Right, on the other side of a tree or something. It's mainly the adolescents and the females that I've seen and dealt with. And I found out recently that's because right across the river from my research site is the hunting grounds, which, great researchers that came down, they postulated that the males are over there hunting the majority of the time, and the females and the cubs are on my side. And, but maybe that's another reason why some of the all of the encounters are kind of, passive and benign, because they don't feel a threat from me. They don't have to move out of their way. It's already a place where they're comfortable.
Yeah, they don't have to change anything. You're not an inconvenience to them in any way. You're not.
Absolutely. And I won't ever bring people out there that would be,
Yeah, we have areas in the UK where, look, Cannock Chase is one of them. You'll hear a lot of dogman sightings and werewolf sightings come out of Cannock Chase. And everybody goes to there. Everybody goes there to research. And people get disappointed with me because they'll say, oh, I'm going to go to Cannock Chase. And I say, I wouldn't go. Because somebody's there every Friday, every Saturday, every Sunday. There's paranormal groups out. There's UFO groups out. I wouldn't. I'd go somewhere a little further out, along a stream, follow a stream out and find a small section of wood and work that every day or every week, until you know it inside out.
I'm glad you came on here and said that as a 35-year, veteran in this field. Work the same area. Sometimes the globetrotting things, it works for some, I guess, maybe.
Say you go to an area, as an example, you go to an area this week and you don't find anything. You're not finding any signs. You're not finding anything else. So you give up on that area and you go a state away. What if they're not there this week? What if they're there in winter?
Right.
So keep.
What if they're just a little bit further away? What if they're not 2 miles in, but 4 miles?
Yeah. What if they don't come to that area till dusk and you're there in the afternoon? Visit it at different times of day and get to notice what's in that area. And you will suddenly think that stick was not there yesterday. I know it wasn't, because I came and it's on my photograph. It's here on my phone. It's like you and your notebook. You know what you saw last week, last month, last year in that area at that time. And it also, you can be proactive. You can have a look and see, hang on a minute, we're in March now. So what did I find in April? Right, well, in April, I found a lot of wires and a lot of structures. So I'll go back to that area and I'll see if I'm finding those similar things 12 months on. Because sometimes you must have the halibut effect, as you call it, where you outfish one area and you have to move.
Right.
And then you might come back to that.
I don't want to, we were talking about that a little bit. We touched on, I don't want to do that I don't want to do that to this area or the
Yeah,
creatures
exactly.
themselves.
Yeah,
You know, I don't
you
want to put them in that.
keep it. You have to keep that area and treasure that area like you're the caretaker now, because you've been given a
Right.
fabulous gift. You've made contact and you're building a relationship, and that is a very rare thing. So you have to. I don't think you understand how rare that is. So you have to treat
Oh, I
that.
do, and that's why
Yeah.
I'm not going to. I got a few more pieces of footage that I'm going to put out, and like I'm leaving the area alone for a while,
Mm.
just because I'll go out on my own.
Yeah.
I always will, but I'm not going to. I don't want to. I don't want to exploit the area. I don't want to feel like that I am exploiting the area, because I do realize that's extremely
They
rare. The
must be very,
situation.
very comfortable with you. They must be quite happy to have you wandering around because if
I took a long time to build that too,
yeah, exactly.
And one day I came out and I saw and see Brown Springs, my research area. When people that are tourists or outsiders, they hear Brown Springs. You can look on Google Maps. There's one cemetery. It's a Native American cemetery, and then there's a road called Brown Springs Road. Well, there's a strip of forest that goes on for miles and miles and miles and miles and miles.
Right.
People were thinking that that cemetery was where I was conducting my research, to which
Right.
I've only been to that cemetery one time in almost a year doing this. And that was the other day with Tex DGBF, a subscriber, and his name's Jay. He's become a good friend of mine. Had an interview with him, and he didn't live that far away. And he was into the paranormal investigating stuff when he was a little bit younger. And, he kind of convinced me to go in there. And it wasn't, I've never felt the need to go to that cemetery. But
Yeah.
one day I was in my area and I was driving back on the main road towards the highway, and I seen guys, they two guys and I think three girls or something like that, maybe been six of them coming from that cemetery off that trail, crossing the street in front of me. And they had backpacks on, cameras and all this stuff. And I said, man, these kids have came on that channel and they've seen my stuff and they think that they're going to go in there and see Bigfoot.
Yeah.
And that kind of haunts me, like I wouldn't want somebody going in there. And the researchers that came ahead of me, maybe that's what they were thinking. But if I knew who these kids were, I'd contact them in private.
Yeah.
I wouldn't
Yeah.
make some
I-
show of it. But
You
I don't want anybody going in there messing with them,
yeah,
disturbing the
exactly.
area, or getting hurt.
I think there comes a choice to every researcher. There will become a choice at some point on what you want from this research, and it will either be the video or the relationship. And the people who tend to choose the video, their research will peter out because you're not going to get the video. It's not going to happen. It is not going to happen in our lifetime. Accept it and move on. You don't
I've
need
been happy with what I've got. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like it's been accepted by a vast majority of the people that's seen it as being real, because it is. And,
Yeah, exactly.
I'm just ecstatic that people realize that. So I could, in theory, I couldn't stop right now, but I could stop right now and say,
I understand that. Yeah, I understand that completely, because that's part of it. You make your choice on what your research is about, and you're okay with that. You know that this is the way I'm going. This feels right to me. This is
right.
what I'm going to follow. And I've got my video. I've got some of my answers, and it's okay that I don't know everything. It's all
but
right.
a lot of people can't do that, though.
Yeah,
I mean, that's pulling alligator teeth to a lot of people.
Yeah, I understand, but that's just going to frustrate you. You're just going to end up where you're chasing your tail, really. If you can really.
And I had a fork in the road, and I could choose that route to where I'm going to be the one that gets the Patterson Gimlin film times 10, or I could go down this other road. But I chose another path. I want to show people the truth.
Yeah, exactly. That's it, and give them choices.
Right. And I'm at a great spot on the river. There's a lot of different places I can go, a lot of different places I have been. I don't have to shackle the people who follow the channel and my research to this one area while putting that area at risk of, kind of being disturbed in a way.
I remember Tom Powell, and he was talking about that he went to an area 100 miles away. Before he realised that basically he asked for wood knocks in that area, nothing. Went home and got the wood knocks that he's, basically in the forest at the back of his house. And I think that's what started him on the book. The locals, I'm not really sure. I do read Tom's blog from time to time because he has this laid back way of giving you what he's seen and then you make your own choices from it. And it was him who said, just find one area close to home and just make that your area, because they are everywhere. They're absolutely everywhere. And you'll know yourself when you find the right area, because you'll start to see the signs. And like, you can pass that knowledge on to somebody else now, and they can go and find their area, you know, close to their house. And if you say to them, right, well, I suggest, I would, if I was you, I'd suggest looking at the area at different times, or, you know, and then they get something.
Right.
Their research might go in a different way than yours. But
Absolutely.
That's how it's meant to be, isn't it? That's how it should be. We're all individual.
That's what I was about to say. That's how it should be. If everybody was doing the exact same thing, getting the exact same results, we'd all be on some carousel that was never ending.
Yeah, exactly.
And nobody would learn anything.
I think that's acceptance. That's been the one theme throughout the show, hasn't it? It's just accepting that not everybody thinks the same as you, and not everybody sees what you see. And just bear people out. Just listen to them, even if you think it's an absolutely ridiculous claim. Take the time to listen to them, because you don't know that you're not going to be in their shoes in 2, 5, 10 years' time.
Right, and that's why I never discuss. You know, I've gotten people who are really pissed off at me because I say that I don't believe in the Nephilim, or especially the whole portal thing. You know, they've emailed me paragraph upon paragraph of, oh, well, this is why they jump through portals. I see physical creatures who leave feces, build nests. I can see when they run off. I can see them run in the deep brush and jump up to their belly or fall to their belly when I put my eyes on them and army crawl.
Flesh and blood. They're flesh and blood. When you look at them and you see them, there's no doubting, is there, that they are flesh and blood. And
yeah, but I'll always say, though, I leave that option open, because I don't want to be the guy that goes out there and then all of a sudden they pull out the Star Trek beam me up Scotty device and they jump through a portal after I've been saying all this time that they can't. So
yeah, exactly.
Plus there are decent, honest people who said that. So I don't want to discount anything.
I know a few researchers that were ape chasers that were on the ground, 100% flesh and blood. What we're chasing is an ape. And 10, 15 years on, experiences that they've had out in the wild have changed that completely. And now they are the believers and not the scoffers. So I think things change, don't they? You can have an opinion now, right, and it may change, it may not. You may be of the same mindset for the next 10 years, and that's wonderful. But not everybody feels like that. Everybody has to have a way of learning it on their own, or they're not going to learn it. They're just not. There's no point in me saying, do this.
Absolutely, Miss Hatswell. And that's why I tell people, don't put the cart in front of the horse. It doesn't matter in the long run. It don't matter what I think they are, what you think they are, what the people listening think they are. What matters is they are there. They are there, and we do the best to document the encounters and document the creature. After we kind of build that data, we can start. Okay, this is what the data we have that leads us to believing they are this. And you said it earlier. There's people who've not even been past the picnic tables who will tell us, and I know you've probably dealt with it a whole lot more than me. It baffles me sometimes, because I'll ask these people and they'll be honest. Like, I'll say, okay, I'll be more than happy. I'm not looking to argue or anything. You can come on live and show your evidence and kind of explain why they are these things. Oh, well, I've never been out in the field. Then what are you talking about? Like
all the time. I get that a lot. All the time. I get the other one that you get is the ones where they show you a structure and you're trying to be constructive. You're not trying to be a bully or anything, and you're saying, I think that maybe is man-made because I can see saw cutting, and and I think those logs have been cut by a saw, and I think that's a bush shelter. No, it's not. You're picking on me. You're a bully, and I think I'm not. I'm just trying to educate.
Bring logic, yeah.
The next thing I would have said was, here's an example of what I think you should be looking for. Something where the sticks have been snapped or twisted away from the tree, not cut with a saw. Cut with a saw means human interaction. But it's as if the whole world falls down because I don't accept that 17 deer prints is a Sasquatch footprint.
Yeah.
Yeah. So if I can say to you,
exactly.
I can identify 17 deer prints in that. I think it's just print after print after print on top of each other, and it's starting to look like a print. But they take great offence at it. And I think you've got to, on both sides of the scale, you've got to keep an open mind. Not everything you're finding
Absolutely.
is Sasquatch. It's not. It may look strange and anomalous, but it's not. You need, that's why you need the database. You need other people who can say to you, well, actually, I think that's bushcraft, because I've done that when I've been out and about. You know, we find
I've been guilty. I've been guilty of, being overzealous myself. And then when I go back the next day, I can see that, you know what? I'm down here at a river bottom. There's been flooding. That's why all these sticks are piled together. But what about these with none of the red dirt from the floodwater on them? They've been moved after the fact. And that's when the kind of investigative mind kicks in,
I like the little things, like little ground triggers that you find. And they're not seen. And they fascinate me, the tiny, small stuff. We find like hoops, you have the arches, we'll leave them much like the letter U upside down. And I think, why would they make them? What reason?
I've not seen the letter U upside down yet. I've seen the upside down triangle.
The triangle. I'll send you one across. Probably it's getting late for me now, so it'll probably be tomorrow. But
yeah, and I do appreciate you, because she's in England. Everybody in chat, please thank our guest for, this is very, very, very late for her. She wanted. I was really ecstatic to have her, and this was kind of a spur of the moment thing, and I'm really glad we did it. I was really excited to talk to you.
It's much
like
easier.
I said, you're
much easiher for me because I can get things across that you can't get across when you're typing, and you can't. There's no nuances with the type, and you don't know whether I'm being sarcastic, whether I'm being funny or not. And I have a sense of humor, and some people take me the wrong way sometimes.
I think that's
I said before today, if you want to pin cake to a tree, pin cake to a tree. It's what you want to do when you're out there. And I think that they think I'm being, funny, and I'm not. That's just the way I am. I jest about a lot of things, but it's lovely to be able to talk the ideas out. Because what worries me is when I go, who else is going to document all this stuff and database all this stuff and add the things to the map? There's lots and lots of researchers now helping me, which is wonderful. But before that, there wasn't. And my time now is not. I can't do outdoors research anymore.
Well, I think I'm going to. You've done enough.
Yeah, that's how I feel. I think I can concentrate now. I miss programs like this, and I miss videos, and I miss seeing what other people are finding because I'm that busy. I've not got the time. And it's only been in the last month where I've said no more. I'm cutting Facebook down to a minimum. I'm just going to deal with the witnesses now, the witnesses that come forward, and any researchers that need a bit of help. I'm going to give them advice, and they can go and I can't do the journey for them. They've got to do the journey for themselves. I put my hours in. Now it's time for me to back up a little bit and enjoy it and watch as everybody else finds
and to keep taking people's heads off who come into this field for fame and attention.
If you're out there in the UK and you are thinking of hoaxing, I will find you. Yeah, because he's not a Bigfoot
that you got. Like, he was in America, so not just the UK folks.
I've had a couple of Americans.
Yeah. She's a watchdog throughout the entire northern hemisphere, the entire world. Like, if you are in the field and you're going out and you're kind of playing towards people's, I don't even want to say gullibility, but their willingness to want to know and to want to learn for your own benefit.
If you're before. Somebody's taking the time to answer your emails. When I answer my emails, I'm not sat with my husband, am I? I'm not seeing to my grandchildren. I'm answering your emails, and I'm completely interested and focused on what you are putting.
Absolutely.
And I'm trying to answer honestly. So to me, hoaxers just need cutting up at the legs. They get into things and they poison it, and that poison spreads. And then it becomes this whole following of, well, I know for a fact because she said, or I know for a fact because he said. And then I can say, well, actually, they also said this if you'd like to look at it. So now
And that's
you can
important.
make your decision, but with all the information to hand.
Because when somebody comes with confidence, that's the thing about it. When somebody, whether they're pulling some sort of hoax or whatever, a lot of people just want to learn. And when somebody speaks with not even boastfulness, but with confidence in what they're saying,
Yeah.
when the whole time what they're saying is BS, there's going to be people out there that, this person sounds like they know what they're talking about.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't know because I'm not in that environment. So they're, of course, going to take that as gospel truth.
And it doesn't just
go. I don't even blame the people.
No, I don't, because I come from the way I was brought up was that you treat people the way that they treat you. So I think that everybody is intrinsically honest. And I think that everybody wants to help everybody else, because that's how I am as a person. And I get a lot of joy when people write back to me and say, I made it back into the woods today because of you. Or I took the grandchildren into the woods today. That is an amazing feeling. What does it feel like when it's based on a lie?
Just doing this less than a year, Mrs. BDRP can tell you, because she's on panel with us and she's been silent, but she's seen me talk to people who didn't want. Well, you can tell her, because you haven't said very much. You can say hello to our guest, because she's an outstanding lady.
I just want to tell you thank you, and the people in the chat have really enjoyed you on our show.
Oh, that's good. Oh, I am glad about that.
They've been ecstatic. I mean, I've got 2 computers up. I've been trying to keep an eye on it. I know Miss BDRP is watching it, but I mean, it's been nonstop. And Lakay the librarian, Jillian Cranston, who I call cousin Jillian, she's from your neck of the woods.
That's brilliant.
Yeah, she's in southeast England, I believe.
Right. Well, hopefully I'll find her tomorrow and we'll have a chat.
Yeah, I mean, I've been watching sort of, and there's a lot of people who subscribe to your channel, and there'll be a lot more because
yes,
you're a good woman and you're doing good work.
And also, if you could let the people know who will be listening later how they can, get in contact with you, your website, and
yeah, definitely, I will definitely do that.
And all that will be linked and I'm pretty bad at this, and I've been going back over the time, quote unquote, the time I was off, and linking the channels and stuff. But your website, and you do have a YouTube page.
Yeah, I do.
Those will be linked, and those will be linked in the. That's why I'm glad Tater Plays. And this is Deborah. This is kind of community I want to build. Tater Plays is a video. He has a video game channel,
right?
But the guy is brilliant, and I've made him the co-host of my late show, and he's kind of doing a lot of the research with me on the back end of things as far as the internet and looking up archives and stuff like that. And the guy he's a whiz kid at this stuff. It's phenomenal. I could be on the late show. I could and we have some sort of like almost like spot, the link, the middle link thing.
Yeah.
He can know that I'm really interested in something, and he can have it pulled up, and all I got to do is say his name, and he's right there with it. I mean, it's amazing to me.
That's Catherine Chadwick in England. Catherine Chadwick can find anything. I can say to her, I'll find like a little line in a newspaper, and it'll say, and the man was reported as a man monkey. And I'll say, Catherine, can you find out anything about this? And within minutes, my message box is going, and she's finding articles and newspapers. I'd be lost without Catherine. Catherine is clearly my tailor. She is wonderful. Well,
I mean, put in the good word for old Dee over at the Bigfoot Dogman Research Project. We'd love to talk to her as well.
Well, most definitely. She's the witness for the Doggaloo Howls in Wales as well, and that got her interested in wildman research. And she's been on the ground, I'd say, for about 5 years, and she has done a massive amount with the signs and the glyphs. She, I think she's got a bit of a habituation going. She sticks to the one area, and she's been in that area for, like I say, for about 5 years. Her stuff is fantastic. Well, she doesn't YouTube or anything like that. She's a very private person, but she's a fantastic researcher. I'll put a link to Catherine's Facebook page in case anybody wants her, because if you're looking for anything, a story or something old, she is fantastic at finding things. I say she's like Clint Eastwood. As I say, Catherine, Clint Eastwood this for me, and then she just goes bam, and then there you go. 2 seconds later, there it is, all the information that you need. She's absolutely
wonderful. Awesome. Yeah, we have a few questions, if you would. I know it's late where you are, and
yeah.
Let's see. Mrs. BDRP?
Yeah, go ahead. Night Companion had a question for you. It says, is there a unique name given to Sasquatch or Bigfoot in England or Scots?
Yeah, we call him the Wild Man. Years ago, they used to call him the Woodwoose, which is a really strange name. I know. He's either the Green Man or the Woodwoose. But like in America, he has hundreds of other names: the Mud Man, the River Man, Hairy Man. But basically, they either get British Bigfoot or the Wild Man. I think of him as the Wild Man.
Awesome.
Great question.
Here's another one too, Rootman Jr. Has Deborah done any investigation in the United States?
Who was that from again, Mrs. BDRP? No. You were breaking up. I'm sorry.
Rootman Jr.
Rootman Jr. Sorry, Deborah.
Yeah. No, I've never, only in England. I've never been to America, unfortunately. No.
Yeah, she spent 30 some odd years putting together a map of sightings. I don't think it would benefit the British Isles very much for her to come to Arkansas over here.
I would don't get me wrong, I would love to. I would absolutely love to. I do have a print from Bluff Creek. That's my absolute prized possession. Nice. And I would like to go there, but I'd like to go to Washington State as well. I think if I ever had the money.
Come to Oklahoma. Oklahoma is the unsung hero of Bigfoot encounters. We make Oregon and Washington look like, well, I won't go crazy, but there's a lot more encounters and sightings than I think people really realize.
Yeah, most definitely. Well, I would imagine.
But you're right. I would like to go to Washington as well.
How many people have not come forward and said what they've seen?
Exactly. Great question.
Here's another question for you too. This is from AJ Triple Double. Is the acceptance of the big hairy man being real becoming more open in mainstream society in the UK?
I would say 3-4 years ago, there was a definite shift in the trend. Before then, nothing. People were not interested. They didn't discuss it. It was a very small group of researchers, like a really little group. I've noticed over the last 4 years that more and more people are interested, and they're asking me to find them areas or to show them structures and cliffs because they're interested in getting in touch. And the last 18 months has been unbelievable. It's like a roller coaster, and it seems to be picking up speed really quickly. So I've gone from having maybe 1 or 2 sightings a year to now I get 1 or 2 sightings a month. And I've had occasions on time where they've come in that fast. I've had to come offline to see to them all. So there is a definite speeding up of people being interested and reporting, which is wonderful. So it is becoming more accepted, but I wouldn't say it was mainstream yet, no, unfortunately.
That's really interesting, Deborah. I have a question, actually, now that you said that, because I've said to people before, I think that there's been some sort of a population boom. That's the only thing I can think of, because it's like that here as well. I believe I read somewhere, and I may be wrong, that there's been more encounter in the past 20 years than the past 200 years or something like that previous. That may be because social media, a lot gets attributed to that. But I think that
easier to report, much easier to report now. And people know what they've seen, because you've got to have the sighting, you've got to have the witness and the Bigfoot, haven't you? And if they don't know it's a Bigfoot, then they're not going to report it. So I think it's a combination of that. And
so there's a frame of reference where there was none before.
Yeah, where people haven't known where to. 5 years ago in the UK, if you Google British Bigfoot, nothing would come up at all. So who do you report it to? Who do you tell? And it must be like that in America, even though it's so mainstream, there must still be witnesses out there that have told, it was just a bear that I saw, or or the family's convinced them that it's just a bear that they've seen, but at night they're thinking, was it a bear that I saw? I don't know. A lot more people are reporting it, aren't they? Yeah, which Absolutely. Is a wonderful. I think it's wonderful. It's absolutely wonderful, because how many more people are out in the woods now? Enjoying nature and doing things that they not done for like years and years and years. Oh, people are thinking, oh, I think I'll go and camp. I think I'll take the canoe out. That's growing in the UK. Look, that's lovely to see that more and more people are out there.
I think it may be going the other way here, though, because there's a lot of the fear factor that's involved.
Yeah.
I don't have the numbers to back that up, but, just from people I talk to, they say, oh, well, I didn't know all this beforehand. I'm afraid to go. There's nothing to be afraid of. They were there back when, everybody was having their lovely picnics.
Yeah, they've always been here, yeah, and they will be here much longer than us, I think, in all honesty. And I don't think we've got, as long as we're respectful and we don't trample over something, then I think we're absolutely fine to be out there and just enjoying it. I think they'd quite enjoy that. We could connect with them in a much easier way, couldn't we?
I think it's good for them as well because, I think that they need, even if it's at a distance, more human interaction. That's just me. To know that we aren't all just warmongering.
Yeah,
killers.
Most definitely, yeah. They need to see and a nurturing care inside of us. Yeah, there must be I think that there must be people out there that do have a relationship, a very close relationship, and have never come forward and told anybody. And I hope that goes on.
I wholeheartedly believe that. Sometimes I think I may be doing a disservice to not the field, but sort of like I said, those kids coming out of, when I saw those kids coming back from that cemetery, who camps out in a Native American cemetery? You know what I mean?
I know. But take solace in the fact that they find being elusive quite easy. It's their first nature. It's what they do. They would have heard those kids coming before you saw them. And it's not that, it's the smell. We surround ourselves with chemicals and deodorants and washing powders and this and that and coffee and petrol. And we must smell amazing when we walk in the woods, They have all these incredible scents that to them are completely foreign. And I would imagine they smell like quite a ways off. Yeah. And that's probably why we say they smell.
I tell people not to wear colognes and perfumes too, because they have those artificial pheromones in them, and I don't know how these things will react because they are some sort of a creature, maybe not animal. I don't know where they are between. I don't know exactly what they are. I'm just going to say that.
I don't.
You know what I mean? But
no,
they do
have. You don't want to make a mistake, do you? You don't want to be out there doing the wrong thing.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Right. And I don't want some cheap pheromone to be the thing that turns something past them into something aggressive.
I think when people go out and trap, they don't go in clean clothes, do they? They wear the same clothes for like 6 or 7 days and they're stinky. And because I think that's
like the outdoors,
like a more natural smell. And I think that's why we think the wild man smells, because he's just living in a more natural environment. But we must smell in the sense of we have all this artificial scent on us. So we must smell quite strongly, I would imagine, when we're outside. And I think that when anybody says, when the Americans say, you're going to go catch it, and we're going to get the body and we're going to sell it for £1 million, I always say, wear bright clothes, and then it's really easy to find your bodies then. When, when they come in to get you. You are never going to sneak up on one of them. And
there's no way.
It's just not going to happen, is it? It's not going to happen. So you just
I know that there are those encounters, though, and I can't wrap my mind around it. I think that somehow their attention, they must be so in tune with what they're focusing on that sometimes those mistakes do happen. And as you said, just like your encounter and countless others that I've heard, the creature looks just as surprised as the person that has the encounter.
That's what I got from it. He looked confused. He looked as confused as I looked. He didn't. I acted like he was a monster, but he didn't do anything to make me act like that. That was me. That was on me. That he just looked at me.
Right. It's like maybe he was focusing on something, because their eyesight, I believe, is immaculate. Maybe it was focusing all its attention on something, pretty far away, and then all of a sudden it snaps back when it feels your presence. Like, oh hell, I'm not alone.
I found a couple of things in the UK. I've got about 5 minutes, and then I'm going to have to go because I'm getting really tired now. But I have noticed that all of the sightings have one. Do you have megaliths in America, like Stonehenge?
I'm going to say no, but somebody's going to correct me on it. I wish Tate was online, but I don't think so.
Well, in England, we have lots of them. We have lots of standing stones that have come from the Neolithic time, and a lot of the sightings are around them. And I don't know if that's because they're just like an ancient road sign, something that they would recognise, or I don't know why, but they do seem to be there. And where I had my sighting, there was 4 of them, but there was also an overgrown vegetable garden. And it had lots of food in it, lots of foodstuffs in it. So I don't know what the actual attraction was. And I don't know if I've disturbed him. He's been there for a reason, and I've disturbed him. So he stood still.
We do have the ancient Native American burial grounds, and it's sort of the same thing. A lot of sightings around them. So maybe, that's some sort of remnant from the old world that they
recognize or still use.
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah. I do wonder.
I think Hatswell. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, I wonder. So when you do the witness thing, where you say, "Well, was he there? How did he get there? Why would he be there? Why was he there that day?" I think if he hadn't moved, I wouldn't have seen him. I would have left that day and not even known he was there. And it was just.
I think about that sometimes.
That slight
fishing when I was younger, like.
If I hadn't caught that movement in the corner of my eye, I wouldn't have known he was there. And it was only because we made eye contact. Because he was shadowed and he was in the leaves. And 99 times out of 100, I would not have had that encounter. And I think he moved. Maybe he had to shift position. I don't know. But it was that movement that caught my eye. And that's when we looked at each other. And do you know when you see something that shocks you and you lean forward to have a right good look at it? That's what he did. He looked forward at me. He's like, I was the curiosity. I was the one that was in the wrong place. How could I be there? That's how he looked. Extremely
fascinating.
And then for a split second, I felt like that, but then fear kicked in, and then I was off then. But for that little tiny millisecond of time, we were both as confused as each other. And as the years have gone, I thought, was it a time slip? Was it a ghost of some kind? Was it to try and explain him away? And I've even done that. It didn't happen. It didn't happen. I made the entire thing up in my head. I was just a silly teenager to talk myself out of it because I was really frightened. I thought he was going to be behind every tree and he was going to come and get me.
Oh,
and fine, I was really scared.
I was going to clap myself in the madhouse when I had my first encounter. So
it's not something that you can just put away, is it, Dave?
No, ma'am. No, it's not.
Close the door on it.
I quit school and jumped into this in the deep end of the pool. Like I have to know more. That's just all there is to it. I couldn't go on like, that wasn't it. That noise that I heard and feeling the ground as it was walking next to me. Now that was something that happens every other day. I couldn't just put it off.
That would be much more terrifying because I only saw a tiny bit of him. I only saw his head and his shoulders. I imagine if I'd seen his arms and his muscles and I don't know. I'd have probably melted there and then on the spot. Yeah, I wouldn't. But you have to do one or two things, don't you? You have to pull yourself to pieces, trying to make sense of it, or you have to think, right, I'm going to find answers. I'm going to find other people. Somebody else must have seen this. I can't be the only person in the world that's seen it, and that's how I ended up where I am now. That was basically the journey. That if I can find one more person that saw what I saw, I'm not mad. And then I found one, and then I thought, well, if there's another one out there, we're not mad, are we? And it's kind of grown from that. And the thing that keeps me going
you've done tremendous things. Like, I mean, it's you've gone from that, passive encounter to mapping out.
It's just my way of dealing with it. Yeah, it's just my way of dealing with it. If I can look at it and pull it to pieces and smell it and feel it and touch it, then I can try and start to understand it. And when I was wrapped up in the fear, I couldn't do any of those things. But I also couldn't go play with my kids in the woods. I couldn't do all the things that you're supposed to do when you live with the woods on your doorstep. I couldn't go in them. I was terrified. So I had that choice. I either stayed terrified or I tried to make it smaller in my mind. And the way I do that is by examining things. Yeah, so that's basically what the map is. It's my way of making sense of what I saw that day.
And that's
And I
phenomenal.
didn't think
What
it ever
you
broke.
making sense of that is helping other people in the field make sense of the creature.
Yeah,
So
that's how
that's a
I feel, and
phenomenal
that's
gift
why
you've
I'm
given.
probably the last thing I'd say is we've got to share what you said about we need a community that shares, and it's not about who's right or who's wrong, and it's not about who knows more than who.
Right.
Yeah, it's just about this is what I find in my area. Are you finding the same things?
Exactly.
Yeah, and if we can get it down to brass tacks like that, we're in with a chance, aren't we?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And it baffles me that, 35-year veteran guy who's been doing it less than a year, and there's still not that. That's what I want to do here. It's putting a lot of weight on my shoulders, but I think I can bear it, and I think it's doing great, and I think it's going to spread.
The feedback that you will get from it is worth a million. It's worth more than money. You can't buy that feeling when you know that you've helped somebody.
Oh,
That
absolutely.
person isn't sat at home now terrified, and you've done that as yourself. You can sleep at night. Then you can say, "No, I've done a good thing today. I helped somebody today, and I don't need to be
Right.
scared anymore." And that person will go on and help somebody else. Yeah, and so on and so on, and it will just carry on like that. And then that little drop becomes a big ripple, which becomes a wave, and eventually less people will doubt and more people will know. It will shift. It will go from I think you're wrong because I think there's going to be a big shift, and I think people are going to say no. We need to stop pulling trees down. We need to stop dirtying the rivers. We need to put land aside for these creatures because that's all we owe them. That we have to give them that, and we have to leave them in peace. There, because everywhere in the world there is a wildlife refuge for any animal you can name, but not
Right.
for Sasquatch.
And here in the
Yeah,
States, we
and
call them state, and national forests. So
yeah,
we just
yeah.
don't recognize it as that being what that's set up for. But
Mm.
why not? But that comes into the whole trusting of our fellow man to do the right thing. Because I
We have
don't
to
think that a
trust,
lot
don't
of people would do the right thing, if things like
I'm
that
not
arose.
that naive type that thinks no. We have to trust. I know there's a lot of bad apples out there. I know they are, but it's the not bad apples, the ones that are listening. That we spend our time with them, and we know that
Exactly.
they're going to join with us and help, and we're just going to keep doing that. We're just going to keep joining together, and we're not going to put up with the hoaxing anymore, and we're not putting up with the drama anymore. We're doing it our way, and if you don't like it, there's other places you can go.
I couldn't have said it better. Ladies and gentlemen, my good friend Deborah Hatswell, you are more than welcome back at the Bigfoot Dogman Research Project anytime you want, any kind of new
Anytime you want me to
information.
come on, Dave, just let me know, and I'll come on and I'll answer questions, and we can even do the Dogman thing because I don't know a great deal about it, but I do have a lot of Dogman sightings, so I can always pull my map up and have a look. So anytime you want me to come back
That's
on,
outstanding.
right?
I sincerely appreciate that.
Oh,
Everyone in the chat, I sincerely thank you for the questions. To my guest, Mrs. BDRP, thank you for fielding questions. You guys are awesome. I'm D. Doss. This is the Bigfoot Dogman Research Project for Miss Deborah Hatswell. We'll see you guys in a little bit.